This one has to do with the Ox King. He looks a lot like King Yama from Dragon Ball Z, so... Yeah, this is my, Lunar's dumb idea for Dragon Ball Super manga episode 104, chapter or whatever. And, well, honestly, I think that chapter is about to come out in a day or something. Or, I don't know. Maybe it already has. I'm not sure. Haven't seen it yet. I think it's just speculation at this point that people are coming up with. Something about Vegeta testing Gohan with energy control or something. So, that could be interesting. Obviously, my dumb idea is not going to happen, but it's just a sort of a silly what-if sort of thing. I mean, but basically what I'm going with is, what if the Ox King is actually descended from King Yama? Because they look very similar. So it's like, while Gohan is fighting Goku and Beerus' plan with the whole thing with Broly and all that, what if, King Yama's dad shows up to Chi-Chi's house with Videl and Pan there, peacefully of course, introduces himself as the Ox King's grandfather, and says that King Yama and Princess Snake are Ox King's parents, and that the beast isn't a Saiyan transformation, but his. And let's say King Yama, as well as King Yama's mom and Gohan's great-great-grandmother is, the Supreme Kai of Time. So King Yama's mom would be the Supreme Kai of Time, from Dragon Ball Z Universe 1 on the Xbox 360. And let's just say the husband of that is the great-grandfather Chichi, or the dad of King Yama, and we'll call him the Zero Kai. Since the Supreme Kais as well as normal Kais come from that tree, that the fruit, the Supreme Kais are the gold ones. So, what if the Zero Kai is the person who actually made the tree in the first place, and the tree is like an extension? Think like a Zanpakuto from Bleach. Anyway, as all Kais are both normal Supreme Kai special in trees. So what if the Zero Kai created the tree? And what if the Zero Kai was like training rivals of the Daishinkan back when the Daishinkan was younger, like the way Goku and Krillin were at the start of Dragon Ball? And that he was stuck in something like the Dead Zone. For some reason because of Demigra from, Dragon Ball Z Universe 1, the final villain of that game. Though I still interested, the way Demigra looks, the way he has that transformation. What if Whis and the other angels have a transformation like that? But I'm just saying, what if, King Yama was actually... King Yama and Princess Snake were Ox King's dad. And Ox King's parents... King Yama and Princess Snake are Ox King's parents, and the Supreme Kai of Time, and the person who made the Kais in the first place would be his parents. How's that work? I don't know. Just sort of a little... I'm just saying, if that's the case, then potentially wouldn't the Beast transformation, since it's not a Saiyan transformation, be something that potentially, not only Goten and Pan would be able to possibly tap into, but Chi-Chi, the Ox King, King Yama? As well as, then the question is, what would be the supposed power level of the being that would be a rival of the Daishinkan? Well, hard to say, but I would say... I don't know. 50 times that, a Super Buu? Heck, what if, when... Well, that's a whole different thought right there, but, what if, Super Buu himself had his own separate soul between the whole Fat Buu, Skinny Buu, Kid Buu stuff? So what if at some point you could have a... Because, the Kid Buu came back as Oob, and then you had... Fat Buu basically become who he is. Skinny Buu would be just the instincts of Kid Buu, but just sort of dormant. So at that point, Super Buu isn't really Fat Buu at that point. So I'm just saying, wouldn't Super Buu, I'm just saying, wouldn't... At that point, would Skinny Buu have his own soul? How's that really divided up? I'm just saying, obviously Fat Buu and Kid Buu have different souls. But I'm just saying, wouldn't Super Boo have his own possible... And of course, there's probably ways to argue against that, but just sort of like a what if. Like, what if that were the case? Like, what if, like, Super Boos were to just come back at some point? I don't know. Heck, what if Super Boo returned and not so much absorbed? I don't know. If he came back evil, absorbed, if he not evil, fused with Shin, the Supreme Kai of Universe 7? Then I still say it'd be interesting ideas of, like, say, the end of Dragon Ball Super ties into GT. Like, say there's a Dragon Ball Super Cooler movie where Cooler shows up in a movie form, and let's say Frieza also dies in this one, so it's more so Vegeta and Gohan have to work together to fight Cooler. So we'd have, and of course he'd have the transformation we see in the fifth movie, which he'd probably fight in that form against Goku, but then Goku'd have to, let's say there'd be a fight between Cooler, not only in the like I still like all the original Dragon Ball Z movies, even though they're not considered canon. I think the animation in them is pretty kick-ass. Heck, a lot of times the music's pretty cool too. And I do like certain things like the false Super Saiyan transformation in Lord Slug. I think that looked pretty kick-ass. Heck, at some point I'm considering the idea of just reworking, as pure opinion of course, all the different Dragon Ball power levels and stuff. Though I'd have to really, really, really resist the urge to just like to want to change parts of the story. But then again, I'm also the kind of person, if I start changing one part of the story, I'd want to change. Not only would things do a butterfly effect of changing stuff naturally, but I'd also just want to change more and more things. It's just to pick one idea to change from the show and just to run with that without wanting to change additional things that's a whole nother. But it's just tempting to just want to try to change the story. Not because I think anything is wrong with the story that Akira has done. I like it, except for maybe the flanderization of Goku that's occurred in Dragon Ball Super. Like, initially, Goku's not supposed to be dumb. It's just that why would you expect Goku to know how to do calculus or drive a car if he lived in the woods? It's not that he's dumb, he just didn't have access to that stuff. Heck, that's another idea of a what if. Like, what if just Goku, after the whole thing with Yamcha, before, going to hang out with Master Roshi, stopped briefly by with Yamcha and Bulma, said hi to them, and then went to Master Roshi's, still made it around the same time. I'm just saying, what if Goku, like, spent time with Bulma, studying with her, and with her dad, and basically learned a lot of stuff. Then again, there's always that thought of, what if Yamcha trained harder? But then again, there's so many things in the story that would change as a result of that. Like I said, it's hard to pick just one thing if you're going to change anything. Let alone the fact that if you want to try to rework Dragon Ball power levels to make them as, like, small as possible, because, initially, even by the end of Dragon Ball, Akira hadn't thought up the idea of Saiyans or Frieza or Goku even being an alien yet. That came later. Same way, not only after Z, but even after GT was finished, there was never the word Beerus inside Akira's mind, at least from what I remember reading in interviews and stuff, but of course, who's to say if I'm remembering any of that correctly? I'm just saying he hadn't planned on even the movie Battle of Gods. Heck, I remember there being an anniversary movie that came out after, like, way after GT had been finished, where it was apparently Vegeta's long-lost brother Tarbell or something showed up with his robot wife, and they were being attacked by something that looked like one of those combining mobs enemies out of Dragon Quest VIII. And Goten and Trunks just became Gotenks and easily beat it like it was nothing. It was more so just a lighthearted... I remember around that time the Dragon Ball Path of Power came out, which is sort of a really cool animation style of the original Dragon Ball arcs that featured basically a little bit of Pilaf and a little bit of Red Ribbon Army, where Goku like pretty much became Super Saiyan almost when Android 8 died. It was everything about it was a really kick-ass video. The movie, I mean, I enjoy the movies in it, and even though the Dragon Ball Z movies aren't canon, and they're technically an alternate timeline where stuff, but at the same time, they're just really kick-ass movies. Yes, they may not be canon, they're basic, but one, they're animated and drawn very well. Like, I remember that being one thing a lot of people were pissed off about the Dragon Ball Super stuff. It's just it was drawn pretty badly, with a lot of issues. Whereas the movies for the old school Dragon Ball Z, like I said, Cooler's Revenge, Cooler's Return, Lord Slug, heck, World's Strongest, Tree of Might, Dead Zone, Fusion Reborn, Super Android 13, especially the original Broly movie. Though I feel Broly also suffered the flanderization thing, but at the same time, they also some of those movies were a bit short. But still, like, I really did like them. Heck, there was a time where like Videl dodged Broly's punch. So, and like I said, there's all sorts of time. Like, they've already reimagined Broly for Super, and I mean, honestly, there's tons more ways to reimagine it as well. Heck, like, but it's just there's I don't know so many different options with that, but. Heck, I remember Dragon Ball AF functioned a little bit off the idea of Broly being wished back, but, you know, it was the Broly from Z, and then, but at that point, Gotenks is stronger than Broly, so you actually had Goten and Trunks training Broly. Though I think they could go Super Saiyan 4 at that point in their fused forms, maybe. Not sure. Like I said, Dragon Ball AF was... I think it'd be... of course, we have this Dragon Ball Daimao thing coming out, which initially I wasn't that interested in it. But then I wound up hearing that, you know, Akira Toriyama had a massive hand in it. Like, he was very, very, very involved. So I'm like, at the very least, if Akira Toriyama worked that heavily on it, then I feel I need to check it out. It's just a little bit... You know, the design choices, I mean, I understand we're going, like, everybody's going chibi nowadays, I guess. I mean, so many game designs as well as just VTubers are having a chibi model. I'm like, it's cool, I guess. But the other one looks cooler. But, I mean, everyone's got, you know, artistic. I mean, Chow's from Sonic. I mean, it's cool, but, yeah, it's like, I don't know. It just feels slightly disappointing. I'm like, how is the fight scenes really going to look like that? I don't know. Maybe I'll be surprised. I just feel like a little bit like the fight scenes are going to be awful at that point. But maybe that's just, I don't know, thinking too much on that. I mean, we've had some good, and of course there's questions about the Dragon Ball Super superhero movie, the graphics we had for that. So that was... I'm just saying, I like both the Brolys. They're both very interesting characters. Both the music from the rock bands that were involved in the movies, as well as the actual just background music that are involved. And of course, another cool thing about the soundtracks, you have so many different soundtracks. You have Bruce Faulconer, and then you, of course, multiple different soundtracks with like Funimation, Ocean dubs. And then, of course, there's the original Japanese soundtracks, which, if I remember right, I remember like the stuff by the Boozlong and the Japanese soundtrack was taking a little bit more of an Old West John Wayne type movie sound, and Cellzog was taking, like, the androids were taking on more of a horror type music thing. And it's interesting, each of them had their own take on the way the music works, and it's just, while I can't possibly keep track of all those different songs and musical takes, I just think it's awesome. I like the Bruce. Now, of course, Bruce Falconer is like, his stuff is designed to be more theatrical. Like, he was told he needed to keep music. Like, when he was told for the thing, he was told when designing music for Z that they wanted it action-packed. They wanted music at all times. There was never to be silence, ever. The only time, like, one of the few times, like, Bruce Faulconer kind of argued with them, he was like, hey, the scene with Future Trunks after Cell lets him live, he feels like that should be a really somber scene. I don't think it's really emotionally, I don't think it's theatrically appropriate to have any music in that scene. That should be a really serious, somber scene. But they're like, no, there still has to be something. That's why when you listen to the music that you have when Future Trunks is like just standing there, it's perhaps one of the quietest and least complicated in terms of how much is going on. Like if you go from overstimulation to just, it's more ambiance. And honestly, I think it's fucking perfect. I think it's incredible. I remember one point having like 6 or 7 Dragon Ball Z Faulkner CDs. But, you know, it's interesting to hear the music and the dubs of the other versions. Heck, Team 4 Star, I think, is one of the big reasons Dragon Ball Z came back in the first, like obviously, these studios that worked on Super did an amazing job, but at the end of the day, would there have been really this much of a force for people to watch Dragon Ball Super and one for Team 4 Star? Like, it revitalized interest in it. And it was just, they did an amazing job. It was hilarious. The voice acting was awesome. I mean, honestly, I don't regret not being able to hear them do BoJack, because BoJack is kind of a crappy movie. I mean, it's still drawn okay, but honestly, out of all the original movies, it's got the worst everything. But it's good that we had the movie. But heck, there are people that out there that actually did do an abridged version of that movie. Heck, there's people that did abridged versions of whole lots of things. Heck, a lot of Tour originally did Yu Hakusho way back in the day. Around that time, there was a guy called Gozar who did a alternate reality Dragon Ball Z abridged, which his stuff was completely all over the place. First off, Gozar's alternate reality Dragon Ball Z, while I found it funny, it is 1,000 times more immature than Team 4 Star. Like, at that point, Team 4 Star is like going to Outback Steakhouse and getting a filet mignon or something. Whereas Gozar was going to like Five Guys and Fries and getting a burger. I mean, they're both good. It's just, there was a lot. Someone's being in the comments like, Five Guys and Fries is delicious. I mean, I know. I'm mainly bitching because, you know, one, Outback Steakhouse is also far away, but also it's expensive. And of course, Five Guys and Fries is just kind of expensive, more than like a normal cheeseburger place, which, get me wrong, Five Guys and Fries, the burger is delicious, and it's worth the money, I guess. At the same time, it'd be cheaper for me just to buy hamburger from Walmart and cook it myself. Just saying, it's out a bit of a drive for me. The nearest one is like half-hour drive for me. And if I'm going to drive that far, it's not going to be for Five Guys and Fries. No, don't get me wrong. If I lived in the neighborhood of the Five Guys and Fries, I would probably eat there every day and, well, be fatter than I already am. Yay. It isn't a Lunar D8 video if I don't hurt my own self-esteem at least once. One day I won't be fat, okay? But, as I was saying, I'm not sure anymore what the fuck was I talking. Something about like, oh yeah, Gozar. He's all over the place. Whereas Team 4 Star did stuff in order. Heck, there was a time where Takahata actually did a little bit of a project with Gozar because he did a voice for a person at the Cooler movie as the Nappa voice to ruin the Nappa's death sound, which it was a silly bit of inside humor. 6 trillion bottles of beer on the wall, 6 trillion bottles of beer. Then again, that reminds me, at one point I made a, you know those Japanese folklore tokodamas? Kodamas? You know, the little tree spirit things that are actually kind of the inspiration for the, what are they, despair flowers? You're just thinking Flowey from fucking Undertale. What is it? Hell Valley trees, that's it. The Hell Valley trees from, I think, Super Mario Galaxy. Was it 1 or 2? I don't fucking know. How would I remember this shit, man? I'm just saying. You guys remember those little, like, shadow people on top of the whole, you know, Mario thing? Anyway, I'm just saying, like, those are kind of like the Japanese tree spirit things. which I used as a background image because there's some of those guys with all the jittering heads from the Princess Mononoke anime. I used as a background when I did a 5-hour-long video where I sang Banana Phone. I sang the song Banana Phone 100 times in a row. And that takes a while. Both my voice and my patience were very thin on that. There's times I've listened to songs like Metallica and Korn and stuff like that on repeat, maybe 20 times in a row, and just sort of vibed out to it. But I'll also say this. There has not been a time I've just had one song and just sang it, the same exact song, 100 times in a row. Not only does your voice wear, but the fact of the matter is this. While I still say I don't have ADHD or autism, and the depression is maybe just very slight. Maybe one day I'll take antidepressants. I don't know. I don't know. Heck, maybe I'll share those little videos I did with the tests on that stuff. Like, I don't know. I feel I can focus on things for a certain amount of time, but anytime I have to, it's extremely unpleasant. It feels like watching paint dry on a wall. It's just, I feel like I'm fucking Deadpool talking to... Who is it? It's not Colossus Dude. Or is it? Cable. I'm thinking of Cable from the Deadpool video game. Then there was also a comic called Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. That was pretty interesting. Though they're coming out with the Deadpool Wolverine movie here soon. That thing got really cool. I had to watch that just because that's one, Hugh Jackman. Hell yes. That being said, at one point I mentioned the idea that there should be a dating app for futanari, femboys, and anybody who is one of these people or wants to date them or have a relationship with them for, like, it's like 22 and up. I don't know. I just think Deadpool or Ryan Reynolds in general. Heck, I think Ryan Reynolds IRL would actually think that would be a good idea. I don't know. Still think Bryan Cranston from, Malcolm in the Middle would make a good Mr. Sinister in like a Deadpool 4 movie. Granted, I know he's probably more known for like Breaking Bad now, but I just think Bryan Cranston would make a really good. Though I wonder, like, would it be a good idea for Bryan Cranston to like do some like weight training and build muscle? Then again, who would he train with? Henry Cavill? Hugh Jackman? You could have Bryan Cranston train with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. I mean, they're all... Heck, maybe Wolverine will return for another movie. Or if not, I mean, maybe just Bryan Cranston and Ryan Reynolds could go to the gym together. I don't know. Everyone's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I don't know. You're like Hell Valley trees, the shadow people thing. Heck, I'll say this. I've never done any illegal drugs my entire life. I've never smoked anything in my life. But it is interesting to study the scientific things that go on inside the human brain. And just to read stuff about how different chemicals work with what different neurons. And also to just read other people's experiences and see videos of things to just sort of suppose things. I'm just saying, some of what certain things you see, like people, like you have, like take stuff from, well, a lot of art and stuff in the past. I don't know. This is supposed to be a short video about talking about Gohan. And now I'm talking about the possibility of that, hey, PSA, no one out there do drugs. Drugs are bad. Don't misuse any sort of chemicals. But I'm also the kind of person who likes to read everything in the world. And I'm just like, I draw comparisons between the trip reports of people that describe the Eireil thing from the diphenhydramine people with the Sumerian version of hell. You know, the stories of, especially the old recounts. Then again, there's stuff like the Book of Enoch and stuff like that. Like, I read everything. Of course, King James Version, Bible, main thing I would really suggest for people, but at the same time, it's just, I don't know, just the way that's compared and the art you see of that from people's memories. That looks like the Sumerian depiction of hell, the way it's described and shown, of what the afterlife was according to the Sumerian religion. Then you look at the art and stuff from like DMT or ayahuasca and that stuff, or like listen to stuff from like Terrence McKenna, and you look at that stuff and you're like, doesn't that seem kind of like the stuff out of India? Like the art you see there? I don't know. I suppose one thing was either a hypothesis of, one, whether or not like that stuff's actually like making those people see stuff that actually is real. The idea being that the hallucinations aren't hallucinations, but they actually physically exist. But that you don't see them unless you have. But at the same time, those chemicals allow you to see the people would burn out your brain because your body couldn't possibly handle that, because at the end of the day, that stuff causes severe brain damage to people, as well as tends to cause people to mimic symptoms of stuff like psychosis, as well as schizophrenia and outright delirium. Basically giving people an absolutely horrible, nightmarish condition where they live in constant fear and terror while being in every way handicapped, especially mentally, until they die horribly. Just saying, everything about the whole thing sounds horrifying and terrible and painful. This has turned out like the oddest PSA. Hey everyone, don't do drugs! And everyone's like, why do you have pictures of anime girls for the backgrounds of this playlist? Because, one, I thought it'd be more interesting, and also because I like looking at cute anime girls. Everyone's like, what's with the playlist being labeled about ADHD and autism? It's an inside joke about how I keep sharing videos of all the other random stuff I watch on YouTube on my playlists. Then I'm just like, hey guys, look at this. I saw a Vomi the Squirrel video. It's hilarious. Or hey, I saw this really dumb thing. Or hey, I saw this person with this really outlandish opinion and thought. Or hey, I saw this really scary video about spiders. Or hey, here's this really insane conspiracy theory I came across. Or hey, here's boobs. Well, not naked boobs, of course. That would be not fit to show on YouTube. But fan service boobs, you know, they're not naked and you don't see nipples, so that's allowable. But yeah, I was just talking about like the idea, like, again, do not abuse any kind of drugs. I have never abused any types of drugs. I've only been given morphine once. I think it was like 4 milliliters, and that was at a hospital. There's also a few times that doctors have pumped me full of chemicals, but that was to keep me from dying. Mainly because my body hates me, I guess. Just saying, I got sick a few times from like swelling of the brain or physical damage to me, and that sucks. But at least all that's either due to genetics or due to just me being hit by trucks or shit. Or just being poisoned or on and on. Main point is this. I have never done any illegal drugs. I have never abused any drugs. Unless you count caffeine. I have taken so many energy drinks and some caffeine pills. I've also used a good deal of Advil and Tylenol in order to get through certain jobs that were basically demanding I keep going faster and faster and do more even though my body was hurting. But I think there's a difference between, oh, I took a couple Advil and drank an energy drink and then drank another energy drink. Heck, I remember one point having 2 liters of like Volt energy soda. Main point being is I've never done illegal drugs. I've never abused any drugs. I've never abused anything that would be chemically damaging to me, aside from like caffeine or having way too much sugar. I definitely have a Pepsi addiction. Well, for a little while I did quit the Pepsi, but then I was like, I really like Pepsi. I was drinking some milk earlier. Went for a walk on the bike trail earlier. Walked like 8 miles. Probably go to the gym after this. I'll make one more video after this one, okay? Well, after I upload this video, I'll, I guess, put the videos with the ADHD autism test thing results, which in the playlist. Then I'll record a 3rd video in this playlist. Then maybe I'll go back to the previous playlist, which is a play on words of the 2nd video in that playlist, which is a music video, but I took the English words out of that and turned it into German. I'm just saying it's an idea that, one, no matter what, regardless if my hypothesis about Benadryl stuff is correct or wrong, is, one, no matter what, regardless if my hypothesis is correct or wrong, it still causes brain damage and will kill you and cause horrible pain and will cause a person to have the worst, most horrifying hallucinations you can have. Because there are different classifications of drugs, and some are called psychedelics, some are deliriants, some are dissociatives, some are stimulants, some are depressants, some are antipsychotics, some are psychotics. I guess technically deliriants would fit into that. That's another thing. I'm kind of like hesitant to even take antidepressants because I know that stuff can have other complications, as well as, I don't really have medical insurance at the moment, which I'm going to be getting it again here soon when I get another job. At the same time, it's just, I'm weary about having any sort of chemical in my body that I'd be dependent on. And I know antidepressants, once you start taking that stuff, you'd have to keep taking it. So in general, I'm just kind of weary about any sort of drugs. For the most part, drinking. I don't think I had any alcohol at all until I was like 24. And then basically just, had some drinks with some friends at a bar. I remember one friend I was with, we went to a microbrewery. Well, technically what it was is, there was this one girlfriend I had for about half a year. I really was happy with that person. I'll say this, she had a very pretty face. She was really cool to hang out with. And, I'd hang out with her and her parents, watch like football games and stuff. I wasn't much into football myself, but I enjoyed watching with them. And speaking of which, I need caffeine right now. Like, oh my god, I haven't had an energy drink in months. But I have drank Mountain Dew and Pepsi quite a bit recently. I feel like I need a fucking Red Bull. But, yeah, all in all, like I said, obviously, didn't work out. But I will say this, that one woman I was with, me and her were girlfriend and boyfriend for half a year. Basically 6 months, me and her were together. I would say it's the most healthy relationship I had. We were also having tons of sex. But all in all, we actually did talk a bit and hang out as friends during our relationship as well. We weren't just meeting up and, pounding away. We were actually hanging out and actually legitimately enjoying each other's company. Now, granted, like I said, things didn't work out, and based on other stuff I learned later on, that probably was for the best. Honestly, I don't even know how I would have felt if I had learned about that other stuff back then, let alone the stuff that happened after that. But at the end of the day, biggest thing to say about this is this. I was happy when I was with that person. Heck, there were a couple funerals that happened. One that was really important that I'm glad she was there for me on. It was nice that I had somebody. And I really did love her a lot. Which made everything that happened later on, at least what I did know about, very confusing. And then, of course, like I said, there was more stuff going on that I did not know about at that time, and then of course there was stuff that happened afterward that I didn't know about either until way later on, and that's whatever, it really doesn't matter at this point, but it's just, looking back, I can definitely understand why I was so fucking confused about what the hell was happening. But at the end of the day, I'm still grateful for that relationship. Like I said, 6 months, me and her spent just about every day, at least for the first 5 minutes of that, around each other. Had a ton of sex. And we spent a whole lot of time together with I remember building a gingerbread house with her. That was really fun. Granted, we had a lot of sex after that. But I'm just saying, it was really nice, just sitting and building the gingerbread house with her and drinking some Dr. Pepper. That was fun. I just enjoyed spending time with her. I liked her as a person quite a bit. I would say if I'd actually stayed with her, me and her would have gotten married. But I'll say this. It was the healthiest relationship and the happiest relationship I had. But yeah, I thought she was really beautiful. And I really enjoyed being around her. Not just, obviously sexual stuff and cuddling and all that, but, watching movies and just hanging out with her. I just really enjoyed spending time with her. She also had really big triple D, like 40 triple D tits. 40 being the band length and D, or actually might have been E. Also, they were really perky. Despite the fact that they were so fucking big, they were also really, really perky. Sorry, I got distracted thinking about boobs. Everyone's like, what's the topic? I don't fucking know, right? I was talking about a rock concert or something. Alright. Anyway, so during the time that I was with that person, the person who I think me and her split about a year and a half to 2 years before I met the woman I eventually married, which, oh my god, that's a whole different issue. But the girl I was with back then, which I guess, like I said, healthiest relationship I ever had. 6 months long. Anyway, so me and emotionally healthy person who also happened to be a stoner. Granted, I didn't really like that part, but anyway, me and her had started to make certain plans about certain things, but of course that didn't happen, break up and stuff. But we had actually planned to go to a concert together, like a 3-day rock concert sort of thing. And of course, since we're broken up, that's not happening. Of course, I didn't meet anyone else in the meantime, because I'm just really awful at that, I guess, or just, I don't know. I roll really low on that D20. Anyway, so went there with a friend of mine, and he went with his girlfriend and his friend's girlfriend. They all had a room together, so I think they basically spent the time just eating Donato's pizzas and taking Xanax and smoking pot and hotel room stuff and doing what couples do, even though they're in the same room, so that was probably awkward. I don't know. And then I'm in a separate hotel several blocks away in this massive big-ass city. And I'm alone in a hotel room. I decided to walk out to a grocery store or something. It's getting kind of dark. I think it's already dark, in fact, late. And there's a convenience store or a late night grocery store, whatever it is. I can't really remember. I buy some chocolate muffins and some Gatorade. I also talked to some people on the side of the street. They were talking about World of Warcraft. So I talked to these random people on the side of a building about World of Warcraft. Even though I don't ever played World of Warcraft myself, but I do play quite a bit of video games, so talked about some stuff like that. And then I went back to my hotel room. I then discovered I accidentally bought sugar-free muffins, and I was like, fuck. Still ate them. Maybe I should have bought more food other than just fucking chocolate muffins and Gatorade. I then watched some South Park on the TV in the hotel room. I then went to take a shower. At that point, it's like 2 a.m. in the morning. And I find out that my shower is defective. It's at 2 a.m. in the morning. I can't really talk to anyone. But I still need to take a shower. Anyway, it's technically made in a way to be accessible to the handicapped. The idea is that, you know those shower heads where normally you have a shower that's a metal thing on top of a wall that has a sprinkler system that comes out in you? This was meant to be the one that's more accessible to those with maybe having to sit in a shower with one of the little shower stool things, because it had what it was supposed to have anyway. It was a long metal tube that came out and went almost all the way down to where the turning nozzles are for adjusting how much water pressure and temperature and stuff. And then, of course, you're supposed to have a shower head on that to have a controlled, gentle, massaging, sort of pleasant, relaxing shower experience. However, while mine had the metal tube coming out of the wall, it did not possess the shower head. And of course, it's 2 a.m. in the morning. I think I even tried calling up the help desk. Couldn't get hold of anybody. And at that point, I'm like, well, I want to take a shower, and they can't do anything at this time. So I decided to use the shower anyway. Of course, though, the metal tube is shooting water out at such a high pressure that it is, well, physically painful. At one point, I tried blocking it with my hand, and that kind of hurt. So I think I either used like a plate or just something plastic. I think I had some paper plates or something, but not like the ones that would soak and become like, not like the thin paper plates. The stuff that's like, think like the Donato's paper plates, where it's paper, but it's made of harder stuff. And I'm not like spraying the outside of the edge, I'm shooting it right in the middle. So what it's doing is it's hitting it, and it's just blasting off in every direction from that. So I'm aiming the Kamehameha shower into the really thick paper plates or whatever that I had in my hand, because you couldn't shoot it in your bare hand or else it would hurt your hand. And then it basically made an explosion of water everywhere. So like imagine like the shower nozzle thing is a Kamehameha shooting water that's basically hard enough that if you were to shooting your bare skin with it, you'd probably start bleeding. And then, let's say the paper plate is cell being destroyed. And my hand holding the paper plate in front of the Kamehameha. So my right hand is Gohan. The metal tube is the Kamehameha. The paper plate, plastic thingy, whatever, is Cell. It's perfect Cell. And my left hand, well, that's Vegeta. And as it's spraying that, all the water going everywhere else, the me in the shower still managing to get drenched everywhere and be able to like scrub up and soap and wash myself. We'll just say that like I'm the Dragon Ball Z fusion of Yamcha and Hercule then. Anyway, so after I'm done taking that very awkward shower, I shit you not only was I able to take a shower, and it was interesting, there was water on every fucking square inch of that goddamn ceiling. Even at the far corners, all the way away from the fucking shower, there was a layer of water everywhere on the ceiling where I saw droplets, where it was starting to form droplets, as if it was a leaky ceiling, everywhere. Which is kind of funny, because even right now there is kind of a leak by my shower up in the ceiling right now, which is starting to make the paint peel off the walls, which the landlord might fix one day, maybe. I mean, I can't fix a fucking hole in the ceiling. Well, technically I can't see outside, but it's like leading into a hole in the little attic insulation space. It's leaking from rain sometimes, so it's making the paint by the shower area leak, and well, nobody wants to fucking fix that. Assholes. Anyway, aside from me having to continue to pester those people at some point, even though when they do fix it, they'll probably bitch at me for it, even though I'm like, I can't do anything about it. But of course, that's a different thing. And of course, no, I did not spray the ceiling in my house. That's from an issue with the fucking roof. Anyway, but back to concert time. Anyway, at a shower there, it was like spraying that stuff, and it was going everywhere. And yeah, everything was soaked in water. The floor, the ceiling, the mirror, everything everywhere. But at the same time, it's their fucking fault for not giving me a proper functioning fucking shower. Anyway, they didn't. Even though, I swear, every time I came back from the concert at that same hotel, everything looked completely like as if they'd cleaned it. And yet, despite my repeated bitching to them, they never once fixed the fucking shower. Technically, I only had one more night I came into it, because the third night we just went home. But it's just like, what the fuck? Then I am the kind of person who really likes to take a lot of showers. I like to smell good, okay? Heck, I have cologne that's the Ferragamo stuff and the Azzaro Wanted Collection stuff. I like to smell good, okay? Like, I've never been to an anime convention. At least I don't remember, anyway. But imagine if I did, I'd want to smell good. Like, I hear these things, like, people apparently go to those things that smell bad. Why would you do that? Why would you want to go anywhere and smell bad? And you're going to be like, oh, weren't there times some people complained about you smelling bad when you went to certain places? Of course. Because I'd go somewhere. It'd be 95 fucking degrees outside. It's sunny. And I just walked 2 to 3 miles to get to you. Because you have a small parking lot in your apartment area, and you didn't want me to drive my car over to see you. But at the same time, nobody wanted to come pick me up because they didn't want to spend money on gas. At that point, it's like, your friends suck. I'm like, though to be fair, I haven't seen anybody in fucking ever. I don't even think they remember I exist. Just saying, if I'm going to walk in 95 degree weather, Fahrenheit, in the sun, it doesn't matter how much fucking deodorant I wear, it doesn't matter how much showers I take, if you spend miles walking in the sun with, like, the fucking street hot enough you can cook eggs on it, you're going to smell. There's nothing you can do about that. But yeah, the rock concert was pretty kick-ass. Why'd I even... Alright, because that one girl I was with, like I said, that's actually the second longest relationship I was ever in. The only relationship that was longer than that was when I was married. But the marriage was definitely the least healthy relationship I was ever in, and it started off okay, and eventually it became absolute shit. Heck, I'll say this. I tend to be a very lonely person, but definitely the second half of that marriage, I was lonelier then than I ever was at any other time in my life. During a time when I was actually married, I was lonelier than any other time in my life, even all the years since then. So, yeah. Definitely saying never get married. It just... At least if you're dating somebody and they turn out to be... well, not a very good person or do something really fucking horrible, well, at least then, at that point, you're not sort of stuck, forced, living with, contractually bound to be stuck with an abusive person. I don't know. Then again, so many issues from that as well, but like I said, the girl I was with for half a year before the rock concert, which was like forever ago. The healthiest relationship I ever had. Definitely had intentions to marry her in the long run, but again, that didn't work out. It's just, it was still a good relationship. I guess the main thing I want to bring up about that is just that it was definitely the healthiest relationship I ever had. As now I've just fantasized about Red Bull because I'm kind of sleepy. I don't know, what the fuck am I talking about? Like, it's talking about like drugs. But then again, what drugs do I do? Red Bull, caffeine, Taco Bell. Get a big fucking 2-liter of Pepsi, 12-pack of Baja Mountain Dew, Code Red, or the original Mountain Dew. That's pretty good too. There's a reason you're fucking fat. I mean, I like cake and ice cream too. Also, how are you going to get to the gym if we just keep going on? This is supposed to be like a 30-second video. It's just like, hey, guess what? What if King Yama is Ox King's dad? And now we're like, hey, what if that Eireil thing that the people who write trip reports of, the Benadryl, DPH, diphenhydramine stuff, what if the thing they're seeing is actually real? And them doing those drugs is giving them severe brain damage, as well as making them, think of like a power transformer for on power lines, getting too much power in it, and then it explodes. But that explosion is brain damage. The main point is this: regardless of the hypothesis, which is just sort of a pretty much batshit stupid dumbass theory, but the idea is that what if the hallucinations that people are seeing are real? What if they're not figments of the person's imagination, but the person's actually seeing stuff in the spiritual sort of realm? Then again, there's actually, I think it was the book Leviticus actually says not to tolerate fortune tellers and soothsayers and people that induce. Everyone's like, we couldn't see you doing air quotes. Oh, well, I have to tell you then. I raised both hands. I did air quotations. And it's not to people that induce visions and shit. Like I said, I disagree with a few precepts, like don't eat bacon part. I definitely love some bacon. Or I think it's okay to be gay, or bisexual, or trans, or whatever. But at the same time, I also agree, hey, murder is bad. Doing drugs that are going to kill you and make you insane and give you permanent brain damage, also bad. Also, again, from what I've read on that and just watched videos on, why would anyone want to do that? It's it's literally the type of drug that gives you the most horrifying hallucinations. The delirium is supposed to give you the most nightmarish visions. And here's the thing: the descriptions they give of that Eireil place, now, is it literally the Sumerian hell or afterlife? Probably not. It's just a batshit dumbass idea. Just a random musing. But I mean, regardless if it's true or not, regardless if it's true or not, it's giving you severe brain damage and making you have a horrible experience and will kill you. But aside from that, even if it didn't give you horrific brain damage and cause you horrible suffering and terror unimaginable and kill you, why would you want to have a vision of hell? I enjoy macabre stories and violent video games, and I enjoy using just playing Grand Theft Auto and just driving 100 miles down the street, whee, as I take a turn way too fast and the car makes 50 flips. In real life, I'd never want to fucking drive like that. It'd be fucking dangerous. People would get hurt. But everyone's like, what are we talking about? I'm not sure. I don't know. Main point being is that, one, I have never used those things in that way. Now, I'll say this. Definitely when I was younger, I would get I think I got a couple of Benadryl injections. Basically, I had really bad allergic reactions to things. So the doctor had to give me an injection to sort of stop me from dying. Aside from that, I think I've only in very rare occasions used any Benadryl at all, and it was always the exact, prescribed dose. And it was usually just because I got exposed to like some sort of really strong allergic thing. And the doctor's like, yeah, you need to take this or else one of your internal organs hates you. And I'm like, fuck. Heck, I remember one point my lungs had an issue. I was like breathing weird. Then again, I had asthma at one point. Technically have an inhaler that I was taking for a while. But I can't afford that anymore because it's too fucking expensive. Then again, that's more so issues with jobs that I worked in the past. I mean, heck, I worked a job at one point where I was basically breathing and ingesting the stuff was like powdered metal and powdered paint. But it's supposed to be fairly non-toxic, and I think the only thing serious long term, like my lungs are fine. A couple like calcium things in there, but that shouldn't affect anything. Doctor said that shouldn't be anything to be concerned about. I think my body could just reabsorb that out at some point. Same way some of the veins are starting to have like in the abdominal region, like a few of these veins that are supposed to convey blood to different parts of your body starting to have calcium inside the actual blood vessels. But that's supposed to be fine. Apparently it's just to be expected after things like, you know, car accidents and stuff. Apparently really strong blows to the body cause internal bruising. But I don't know what the fuck we're talking about anymore. Main point I'm saying is this. PSA, nobody do drugs. Drugs are bad, okay? It's a fucking South Park reference. But you guys get the point. Like, I cannot state it seriously enough. Drugs are very, very bad. I have never abused any drugs. Now, I will tell you when I had the fucking bladder surgery, which thank God it wasn't the more extreme version. If I had had the more invasive version they were originally telling me about, that I was really not happy about and really a bit scared and anxious about, I would have died on that fucking table had they done that. Because the less invasive one that I wound up going with, which initially I didn't even know was going to be an option, at least they mentioned it has a much lower chance of success of working correctly, that less invasive one still required at least a week of recovery, and I was basically crippled for like 4 days. Especially the first 3 days. I mean, heck, they spent the second day curled kind of in a semi-half fetal position for like 20 hours in a row. Like, I was kind of curved diagonally to the right at like a 45-degree angle. And it's like, it was so uncomfortable and hurt to hold that position, but it hurt even more to move in any way. But I remember 24 hours before that going to the emergency room with the help of my mom. Because my mom came over and spent 3 days and 3 nights over here to help take care of me. And granted, you know, not like she'd be strong enough to lift or carry me or anything, but she could at least do things like help drain my piss bucket. Or go to the pharmacy for me. Or help me to just move certain things around the house that aren't weighing very much. And of course I had a inflatable bed for her downstairs because I don't own a couch. Though technically I didn't know which bed I was going to be sleeping when I came back because I wasn't sure if I'd be able to make it up the stairs. Which I did, but it took me like 20 minutes to go up one flight of stairs. But I remember that first night, I basically called her on my phone from in my room. And it's just I was in a lot of pain, plus my body was bleeding. So I needed to go to the doctor to make sure there wasn't something... I needed to go to the emergency room to make sure there wasn't something absolutely serious happening that was potentially going to kill me. I also told them, hey, could you guys just give me some morphine? Because I'm in a lot of pain. And they told me no. And I was like, ah. That being said, the doctor had me mostly just taking... I forget what it was. I think there was a certain allotment of Advil and Tylenol, which, while I technically didn't go over, I did use the maximum prescription of what I was allowed to use when it came to Advil, Tylenol, as well as a third thing. I don't remember what the third thing is. It wasn't Oxycontin. That would have been incredibly strong. I think it was more oxycodone. But it was like these really tiny pills. And of course I followed the directions on that, but it was like... It was just... I was in so much pain. And then of course, when it came to... removing the fucking oversized tube, that fucking sucked. I went into detail on that one community post. Like, what, 6 months ago? Oh my fucking god, that was just... I initially tried to take that out, and in my shower I almost fucking passed out and collapsed. My blood pressure freaked the fuck out when I was, removing tubes out of my body that were basically the thickness of a fucking number 2 pencil and like 14 inches up inside my body. Just saying, it hurt a lot. And that was a less invasive one where they didn't technically have to cut me for the most part. They were basically able to just move certain things around inside my body. And of course, I had to do that surgery or I would have died because eventually my bladder would have just stopped working and then exploded, and that usually results in death. Painfully. That being said, the more invasive surgery would have required 6 weeks of recovery pretty much, and would have required them to cut me open and basically do reconstructive surgery on my bladder. And I didn't want to do that because also I would have had to keep that tube in me for for 14 days, for basically slightly over 2 weeks at that point. You're like, 14 days is 2 weeks. I think at that point it counts as slightly over because my ear is itchy. My ears are sweaty. I'm just saying, that fucking sucked. The main point I'm trying to say is this. I've never done any illegal drugs. I have never abused any drugs, whether they're prescription or pharmacy. And I've never smoked anything in my life. I've never smoked a cigarette, never smoked weed, or anything like that. The first time I ever drank any alcohol, aside from church communion, which is like a fucking thimble, first time was I went to a rock concert and my friend was like, hey, this is a microbrewery, they have some of the best quality beer. And I'm like, fine, I'll try it. There's like some sort of wheat living beer called a Hefeweizen thing. And a little bit over that course of the year, I tried a few shots of different things, with my friends and just talked about it. But aside from that, for the most part, I can't even remember the last time I ever drank anything alcoholic. I mean, I take Listerine, because I brush my teeth a lot, and granted, my teeth have a little bit damaged. A few of my back teeth are still busted as fuck, and I've had some of my back teeth removed. But again, that was from that job where I was basically breathing powder metal and powder paint, where, maybe it's not very healthy to have a job where I'm vomiting in my mouth because my body is freaking out from the chemicals, and I'm not allowed to go puke into a trash can because I'm told I need to keep working. So at that point, I basically just, my option is swallow my vomit or quit my job. And at that point, I really needed the money. It was either that or, hey, now I can't support people. I'm just saying, part of being an adult is making sacrifices. And that sacrifice was working 70 hours a week at a job that was making me horribly sick and miserable. I'll say this, at least the Skynet job that I recently quit from a few months ago wasn't nearly as bad as that. It's just, they pissed me off a lot of stuff they're doing, and they basically forced everything out, and honestly, the job itself is starting to go to shit, too. So I was like, I'm getting out. I was just fucking miserable. Mentally and physically, my body was at its limit with that fucking place. Heck, I initially wind up quitting that. Took some time just to walk and stuff to try to because my chest was having, because I was using so much caffeine and energy drinks at that point. I mean, Advil, Tylenol, energy drinks. Heck, there were sometimes I'd be like in my car at lunch break, a third shift, watch a YouTube video on my phone, double fisting fucking energy drinks, washing down some Tylenol and a caffeine pill, and eating some candy bars and some meat. And it's just like I said, they kept pushing the quotas higher and higher and higher, and it's like it didn't matter how hard I was trying. It's just like you couldn't do it. And even then, the way that certain things in business is like I don't expect them to last much longer. Hell, the place I was doing the paint stuff at, they went bankrupt and had to sell a different company 6 months after I quit. And after that, I spent a few years in a grocery store warehouse inside most of my time in a fucking freezer, like 0 degrees Fahrenheit and negative 6 degrees Fahrenheit. Usually when I left out of that, I wouldn't be able to feel my hands or feet at all. Heck, there were a few times I left that fucking freezer. I couldn't feel my dick or my balls or my own ass. Like I'd go to the bathroom to piss and I couldn't even feel my own ass. And I'm like, well, feeling my elbows, I can't feel my elbows. Granted, it's not like I have frostbite damage to my body or anything. It's just like, I'm just saying, it kind of sucks working in an excessively cold environment for too long. Yeah, if I'm in a place that's too warm, I tend to sweat and overheat easily. Like, one thing in that Skynet job, at one point, they had me wearing these, like, really, like, blue glove things, but they didn't breathe at all. So I take the gloves off, and my hand would be drenched to the point that it's starting to overheat inside the glove. So then I would start getting these red blisters all over my hands from the job I was doing. But of course, you know, that's my job. You're not allowed to do anything about that. That place fucking sucked. Everyone's like, I'm still saying, at least Skynet wasn't nearly as bad as the paint place. And at the same time, at least they paid me a lot better, and I got paid pretty well for the overtime. That's why I was able to buy the laptop in the first place. Which, about a week ago, this laptop was making a weird noise. And I was like, oh god, it's about to basically fry it fucking self. It's overheating. Let me feel it real quick. It does not feel hot, so I guess it must be working, or it's not generating heat. I guess I'm not really running a lot of programs. It's literally just, hey, look, a cute anime girl's eyeball, and me talking. That's it. So I'm not really pushing the performance capacity of this computer at the moment. Literally, I remember trying to do a Let's Play of Shadow of War, and it was just a PowerPoint presentation of Italians stabbing orcs and me yelling. Though, I imagine that would be at least the most interesting thing I could do with that, because even if my computer can handle it, I gave the idea of doing Gravewalker, but I'm like, that would just be me failing over and over and yelling and cussing. And also, the biggest problem with that is like the difficulty of that is it's not that the enemies are necessarily harder, which they are. It's that they adapt so much easier, so you can't do most of what you want to do. I'm like, it's one thing to give the enemies more health, but even then, I guess that's also the reason why you have the brutal difficulty as an option, because it increases everyone's attack power. Because the problem is, with Gravewalker, not only is it overly hard, but fighting everyone would take such a long time that, honestly, I would get bored halfway through, even if I was winning. Honestly, I'm the kind of person that I was like, while it was fun to play on Nemesis difficulty, which I can't remember if I played on Nemesis or normal on my computer, but I do remember I remember playing on Nemesis through an entire playthrough on my then PS4. I have a PS5 now. I have played Shadow War again. I played it on normal difficulty. I mean, I didn't want it too easy, but also, I just want to have fun. I'm not going there to have a challenge. I'm going there to just, bitch slap some orcs and shit. I still want fucking mods for that game, and for them to uncopyright the fucking Nemesis system. I've talked about, like, what if we just have cute anime girls everywhere? And then instead of, like, shooting arrows, you, like, throw stuffed animals at them. And instead of executions, you, like, give them head pats and hugs. Just make it cutesy and kawaii and no blood, no violence. Though, of course, in the opposite direction, there are so many people that could probably just make the orcs more fucking out of their goddamn minds. Or make custom, fucking voice lines and names. Then again, at that point, if we just had completely chaotic freedom when it came to mods of that game, oh my god, the amount of racial slurs and just inappropriate comments you would have orcs just saying to people in the most fucked up names. And then, of course, you just start seeing random fucking people like Mickey Mouse or Goku. Or you'd have like a Stolfo or Baki Hanma, Jack Hanma, Yujiro Hanma. video, like you have Mega Man, or let's see who else, Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm just saying, like, if you had free mods, like, imagine what could be done with that. Or some of those Twitch streamers use like the crowd control stuff. Imagine that, like, what the. Imagine if super chats could be displayed through an orc's talking. Anyway, main thing I was just trying to say is this: don't do drugs. I've never done drugs. I've never done anything illegal. I've never abused any drugs. And for the most of my life, I've never really drank anything except for when I was 24 years old. And even then, it's been a long-ass time since I drank anything at all. I can't remember the last time I drank anything alcoholic. So, yeah, I wouldn't consider myself a drinker in any way, even casually. Heck, I remember back when I was still going to bars to hang out with some friends and occasionally possibly be sociable with women. I would just get like a can of Red Bull or something. Because, you know, it's considered more socially acceptable to be drinking something at the bar. But, you know, I don't drink alcohol. So I would just get like a can of Red Bull or something. Which also would give me more energy, which hopefully would help me be more, I don't know, sociable. Does it make it more sociable to have more caffeine in your system? I'm just saying I don't abuse any drugs unless you count like chocolate cake or Dairy Queen, ice cream. Heck, I remember the Godiva soft serve ice cream store I saw one time, like back in like 2015 or something. It was delicious. It's like dark chocolate soft serve. It was really good. Then I drink. I like Pepsi. I really I stopped for a little bit on Pepsi, and part of me is like, oh, I should really stop drinking Pepsi again. And I'm like, but it tastes. Like, I really do like the taste. I like it, and of course, Pepsi's horrible. It's flat or warm. A warm Pepsi, and of course, while I like ice in Pepsi, once the Pepsi starts to melt the ice, it's basically I like really well carbonated Pepsi that is completely fresh, as cold as can be without turning into a slushie, with ice that is not melted at all yet. Basically a super fresh Pepsi, where either, like, say you get a can of Pepsi out of the fridge and then you throw it in the freezer for 5 minutes. Don't forget about it or it'll explode, because, you know, liquids expand when they freeze, primarily ones with water or carbonation, because ice functions differently because of the crystals it forms, because usually most liquids will get smaller when they freeze into a solid, but water is strictly different, especially carbonated fluids. Really bad. But the main thing is water itself forms crystals, which causes expansion. Now imagine that scene of Evangelion where Asuka's sort of teasing Shinji about that whole, oh, if I get into warm water, will my boobs get smaller or bigger? Yeah. Also kind of reminds me of this remix. Like, oh, there's a lot of remixes of Rammstein and Tattoo being a Russian band. We have different... But I think the main ones that you do with that was... there's Mein Herr's Brent with another song, and then Ein Kleiner Mensch with a different song. I'm just saying, Tattoo's a really good band. Maybe I'll share some of their songs in this. I don't know. Still say I don't have ADHD or... Oh, I'm gonna forget those other things. Okay, I need to type that down somewhere so I can remember. Okay. The tests, there's like 3 videos of that. It's happy, it's jolly, it's good. The Dad Don't Stern Bullet Train. AI. Necos. 9000. Alright, Tattoo, which would Not only be singles, but also remix with Rammstein Shinji. And of course, like, I'm starting to do like these videos, like trying to be like, oh, I'm not like, let's be more focused. Just do my videos without sharing other things. And I'm like, oh, but like this video ties with this, and this video is interesting about this. Oh. I still say I don't have ADHD or autism. Never been actually diagnosed with that stuff, so that's how that works, right? I don't fucking know. I'm not even sure what would be like how you'd even test that stuff in the aside from the little tests I took on the internet, which again, it's just the internet. You can't really trust the internet. And even then, it's more like, at that point, might as well give it the same sort of authenticity as, say, taking a Naruto anime character personality quiz, saying, which Naruto anime character are you? Though I also remember there's a really cool soundtrack in, what was it? Bible Black. Though people say that doesn't really count as an anime. I'm like, we're using a broad definition here. I'll just type Bible BGM, background music. Oh, that also reminds me that there's a game called, what was it? Blam with an exclamation point. Machine Head. You know, the whole point was like, oh, we're going to have a really condensed and non-chaotic playlist where it's just going to be like, hey, here's a bunch of really short videos where I talk about something from Dragon Ball Z. Also, at some point, you need to go to the fucking gym. I mean, technically, we're hoping to be done with that third video. Ah, fuck. Oh, I hit the cord. Hopefully, I didn't fuck up OBS. Okay, OBS channel seems fine. I just know sometimes when I touch that, it messes up the recording and I can't hear anything more. Okay, main point I'm just trying to say is this. 1. Don't do drugs. 2. I don't do drugs. I drink Pepsi and eat some candy and cake and stuff. And I like cheeseburgers and pizza and Pepsi. But I'm not saying I really like really good ice-cold Pepsi that's really fresh, carbonated, not flat at all, not warm at all, not ice. Like, because here's the thing, once you get it cold enough, it turns to a slushy, it starts messing with the flavor too. Heck, that's also part of the reason I do kind of sometimes like the old Pepsi Max, which you don't see that anymore. You just see Pepsi Zero Sugar, which is like, But it's just like the Pepsi Max had like double the Pepsi caffeine of normal Pepsi. But also, it's like, while Pepsi Max and Pepsi Zero Sugar had, of course, a different flavor than Pepsi with sugar in it, let's be clear. They weren't really a bad flavor, but it was a unique, different flavor. Like most sugar-free sodas taste like absolute fucking garbage. But Pepsi was different. Pepsi, the sugar-free Pepsi, actually tasted good. Now, did it taste like actual Pepsi? No. No, it didn't. It didn't taste remotely like Pepsi. But it still tasted good. Whereas the other stuff, like even sugar-free Mountain Dew, does not taste like Mountain Dew. It doesn't taste good. It tastes like shit. But Pepsi, well, normal Pepsi is preferred, though I have tried stuff like cherry Pepsi, and that was okay. It was cool. But honestly, I prefer normal Pepsi way more. I'll say this. Zero sugar Pepsi still tastes good. It doesn't taste the same as Pepsi, but it's definitely got a similar profile. Same regard, Pepsi Zero Max, like it's had more caffeine, of course. But here's the thing: did it taste different? Yes. For whatever reason, Pepsi Max tasted different, and it even also tasted a little bit like. Obviously, you don't want something too carbonated, mind you, but at the same time, it tasted almost like it was a little bit more carbonated than normal Pepsi or even Pepsi Zero, and the taste was a little bit different than the zero sugar Pepsi. And of course, it didn't have the same taste as normal Pepsi. But it definitely had a similar profile. But it definitely had an extremely different sort of... I don't know how to say it. You could definitely taste that it was Pepsi, but it definitely tasted very different. And it didn't taste like Pepsi Zero either. It had its own unique flavor. It almost also tasted a little more carbonated than other Pepsis. But it was still good. I still liked it. But of course, normal Pepsi is no preference. Also, the Pepsi without caffeine? No. No, why? Why would you do that? If you're going to drink Pepsi, at least get the basic amount of fucking caffeine, okay? I mean, also, I'll say this. The Pepsi, no caffeine, I don't know what it is. Like, technically, it still has sugar in it, but it tastes like garbage. Like, I don't know, like, if you were to give me Pepsi without caffeine, like the non-caffeinated Pepsi, and tell me it was normal Pepsi, if I would just think, like, maybe I'm just imagining it tasting different. But I'm just saying this. The Pepsi without caffeine tastes like shit. But Pepsi Zero and Pepsi Max still tasted good. Pepsi Cherry tastes good. Now, granted, I've seen other flavors of Pepsi once I think I may have tried. Like, there was a marshmallow flavored Pepsi once, or a peach. I remember there being a dreamsicle one, which is garbage, and I remember seeing like a pickle and a mango once. And I think I tried those, and it's fucking disgusting. Why would you do that? I'll say this: cherry Pepsi can be okay. Now, Mountain Dew can work with a lot of different flavors, but I'll say this: the purple, whites, and yellow Mountain Dews, fucking garbage. And any kind of Diet Mountain Dew is awful. But I'll say this: normal Mountain Dew, Code Red, and I'd say Baja. Those are mainly where it's at. Pepsi, I mean, you maybe have a little bit of a cherry Pepsi here and there, or cherry Coke or something. But I'll tell you this: normal Pepsi is delicious. Pepsi Zero is still good. Pepsi Max is still good. Pepsi Normal is still preferred. And Pepsi Caffeine Free should never exist. I understand there's people that probably can't handle any amount of caffeine at all. I'm just saying it doesn't taste the same. And now, granted, again, I might not be able to tell the difference if you gave me Pepsi Caffeine and just told me normal Pepsi. I don't know. I'm just saying I don't like... I'd rather have the caffeine. It's not that much caffeine. It's not even a full cup of fucking coffee. By comparison. It's not like we're handing someone a fucking 6-pack of Red Bull. Or like those giant fucking 24 ounce or 48 ounce things of Red Bull that looks like it's like something that you're going to launch in a fucking like shock, like fucking punt gun. I don't know what the fuck we're talking about. It's like, oh yeah, I don't have ADHD, I don't have autism. We're just talking about every fucking subject under the fucking sun. I'd be the worst person for anyone to debate. Not because I like being aggressive. I like actually agreeing with people and being polite with people. I'm actually a bit OCD about wanting to be polite to people. But it's more so that I keep thinking about like different subjects, and everyone's like, stay on the one subject. Like, I can't. I'm just saying this again. 1, I do not do drugs. 2, this is PSA. Everyone out there, don't do drugs. Drugs are bad. Don't do drugs. We'll say this. I wouldn't consider things like... cigarettes are bad for your lungs. And honestly, marijuana's not really dangerous, but at the same time, I feel, again, you shouldn't be drinking marijuana. Smoking marijuana unless you're at least 21 years old. You know, it's definitely something that would be dangerous if you were driving or something like that. Same way, alcohol and stuff like that. Know your limits, because I've seen lots of people drink way too much. And I've had to drive people to the hospital because they had fucking alcohol poisoning. I'm just saying, why would you want to ingest something that's going to make you sick? But main point I'm just trying to say is that it's interesting to draw just sort of a comparison, or just sort of a link between the two things. Now, obviously, regardless if it's a hypothesis is true or not about drugs or psychedelics or deliriants making a person see things that are actually real and not just in your mind, regardless if that's true or not, things like deliriants, like Datura, Belladonna, and stuff like that, or the DPH stuff, or DXM, or any of that stuff, will cause, that one's a dissociative, but still, main point is this. Those things will cause brain damage. They will kill you. And even then, those are usually things that invoke really psychotic, scary, malevolent hallucinations. So even if, regardless if the things are real or not, it's not something you should mess with. And regardless if it's true or not, it's still going to give you brain damage and probably kill you. And there's no way you're going to actually be happy. Like, it's going to cause horrible, horrible problems. I'm just saying, don't do drugs. But the main thing is this, and while technically, things like marijuana would be pretty much harmless in comparison to that stuff. That stuff's not to be taken lightly either. And honestly, I would suggest that I would think most people should not do that either. But you can't tell people not to do marijuana as if it's some sort of horrible, dangerous drug when it's not really that dangerous. Because then people would take that and then they will be like, oh, that's not that bad. And they'll think, oh, maybe they were lying about the other stuff too. So that's the problem. Like, it would wind up making people more like, but of course, again, each thing has their own thing. And I have never smoked weed. Some because it tends to make me paranoid, and I already tend to be a bit paranoid. And most psychedelics, even the things that are supposed to invoke more happier sort of visions, can still induce permanent psychosis in people, can still have horribly scary things that occur to you that you would wind up seeing. Heck, I mean, a lot of it depends on the person's mindset, and of course that sort of stuff. A person's always supposed to have, someone sort of watching you to make sure you don't hurt yourself or some bullshit. Because, I mean, if you're not in the right state of mind. But again, I think it's just better not to do drugs. Then I'm the kind of person who's just like, oh, what'd you get today, Lunar? Well, I got some Pepsi and some Doritos. I had a chocolate brownie that was next to some donuts and a case at a gas station. And everyone's like, that's why you're fucking fat. I'm like, yeah, I know. I don't even know what the fuck this video is. It's like, I'm making a short playlist where I'm not going to put a bunch of random things with other videos of mine or other people, and I won't go off on different topics. And I just completely fucking failed that completely. Fuck. Mainly I'm just trying to say is this. One, especially the art or replication stuff, that stuff, it is pretty fucking terrifying. Like, why would you want to fucking see that? Then, of course, also, that's more of a thing to... Because I'm one of those people that's probably that, stuff like hell shouldn't exist. Like, it's not... Whether or not it does or not, that's a whole different thing. I'm just saying I feel it's immoral. Like, take movies like the original Cube, the scene of, do you believe in God? Or things like... just everything from all the different religions that have depicted hell. It's just... Or even just movies. Like the Hellraiser stuff. Like... How is that just... And granted, I'm the person who suggested a Let's Play of Demonophobia by DDR Maniac 007. I also was the one who suggested Sir Eldrick IV do a Let's Play of Kid Chameleon Blind. Heck, I still remember Zakana13 doing a Let's Play of Mega Man Legends, but I think his channel's gone. I don't know why. But Mega Man Legends is pretty kick. I still want Mega Man Legends 3. And I still want, like... I would... Actually, I don't know if I would play Brave Fence Musashi on Steam, because I don't know if my computer would even handle it, but I'll say this. Brave Fence Musashi, the original PlayStation, best game ever made for the original PlayStation. And of course you had Samurai Legend Musashi, the spiritual successor to that reboot for the PS2. It wasn't a sequel, it was more of a reimagining of the story and completely different game mechanics. And I'll tell you this, it's a completely different game. It's okay in its own right, but it's garbage compared to the first Brave Fence Musashi. But I still enjoyed playing it. I actually got a couple playthroughs out of it. But I really like Brave Fence Musashi for the PlayStation 1. Then again, other good games, like there's the Gex trilogy on the PlayStation, or Spyro, or Crash. I'll remember that. I got the one game up there, Bland Machine HUD. It's pretty interesting. I'm just saying this, like the images that the people draw from the like DMT, LSD, marijuana, ayahuasca stuff, like the Terrence McKenna guy, like psilocybin mushrooms and stuff like that. And of course, all those things I would still consider to be very dangerous, but of course not as nearly as dangerous as things like Benadryl, diphenhydramine, cough syrup, DXM, ketamine, heroin, meth. Heck, there's off-brands of heroin and meth that are more dangerous. One called Crocodile, and there's Wasp meth. Why is mentioning meth make me think about the J-Schlatt? At one point I made a video called Schleevy, the cursed Pokemon shouldn't exist. I was making a joke about how somebody made a thing called the Schlanket, which is a picture of J-Schlatt's face all over a blanket. And I'm like, what if you did that with like an Eevee? But you know, I can't arts and crafts or edit things on a computer, so I'm just like, hey, I'll mention this as an idea. I'm like, let me type this in here, so otherwise I will forget. Okay, we'll just type other PS1 games J-Schlatt. Actually, let's put an Asmongold video in there too, because he's cool. I'm just saying, Asmongold is like the Diogenes of the internet. Now, granted, Rene Descartes is perhaps a little bit more of a philosophy up my alley, but of course, I only espouse to a few of that guy's tenets. And everyone's like, who the fuck's Rene Descartes? And you're not pronouncing it correctly either. I'm like, he was a French dude from like the 1500s, I think. Whereas, you know, Diogenes was back during the time of Plato. Not the toy. You know, the guy around the time of like Socrates and Aristotle. Everyone's like, did you just fart? Yes. I ate Taco Bell earlier, okay? Everyone's like, how is that a good energy pickup after walking 8 miles on a fucking bike trail? I'm like, I also got Pepsi. Everyone's like, fucking goddamn it. I have to pee now. I'm trying to hold bed though. Maybe you should end the video. It's a fucking hour and a half. It's supposed to be 30 seconds. Jesus. What the fuck, man? Then again, before watching this, I was like rereading through the old Noahide laws and the mitzvots. It's like 613 just in the old Torah. Just reading through that stuff again, just to make comparisons to that stuff and other. Everyone's like, why? Like, I just felt like it okay. I mean, granted, I was also watching a VOD live stream of Mume, the cute anime owl girl, play Undertale. I don't know. I'll go to the gym at some point, but I need to finish this stuff. But at this point, like, I'm taking like so fucking long on this. This is meant to be a really short thing. Between this video itself and the videos I'll be sharing after this, I might have just a tiny bit of ADHD and maybe a slight bit of depression, and I'm only half autistic, okay? Half. So, we'll say like I have 3% ADHD, maybe 35% depression, and I'm only half autistic. I'm trying to be funny with this, but I'm also just, it's like on the one hand, like I don't really know if I am or not. At the same time, it's just like, given the way I am in these videos, I'm like, you know, maybe I might have a little bit of ADHD. I might be slightly autistic. Fuck. Main point I'm just trying to say with the drug stuff is that stuff is extremely dangerous. Stuff like heroin, meth, crack, cocaine. Those are two different things, but it's kind of the same thing. And like I said, there's off versions of that where people like use like bug killer, like wasp spray with the meth. Or they use, I'm forgetting what it is, like something to do with heroin to make it even more dangerous. I'm like, that's... And of course there's a bunch of other chemicals as well. Like there's all sorts of drugs. And just, on the one hand, I'll say this. It's interesting to see just the chemical, like, stories describing not only people's experiences, but also, you know, scientific explanations of how things affect different parts of the brain. Main point I'm just trying to say is 1, don't do drugs. 2, I don't do drugs. 3, I am not in any way glorifying drugs in any way, and I don't think people should do drugs. Also, if anyone out there is considering drugs in any way, you should talk to your doctor and your psychiatrist, as well as to your parents, and, I don't know, anybody that cares about you. Just saying, talk to a doctor. Talk to, like, a doctor at a hospital with a license. But I'm just saying, like, it was just like a thought, like a random little bullshit thought, like, hey, the descriptions they give of the Eireil place in terms of how it is and how it's shown, I'm like, that's very similar to the descriptions of the way the old Sumerian hell is described in ancient Mesopotamia. In the same way, if you look at the stuff with the different fractal stuff and the way stuff is described with the DMT, psilocybin stuff, or ayahuasca, it does kind of remind you of stuff in certain bits of the Hindu religion and those types of art. And then it makes you wonder, like, well, was there anything that naturally existed? I mean, maybe the belladonna stuff. I mean, technically, belladonna, datura, and the DPH would all function as deliriants. Then the question is this: what natural things were existing that would have been available to people in ancient Mesopotamia or even ancient Babylon or Iraq that would have had a similar effect on people? Like, what were people smoking? What were they ingesting? I mean, sometimes people make really odd alcohols from all sorts of things that they shouldn't be doing. Heck, I mean, most of the things that are technically psychedelics are a form of poison. Heck, technically alcohol is a type of poison. Heck, that's how you describe cigarettes too. I mean, that fucks people's lungs up a lot. I'm just saying the main point is this: like, most of these things would be things that are extremely deadly and dangerous to people. And it's not like there'd be a way to... And heck, nowadays you have a fentanyl crisis with it becoming a huge epidemic, especially in a lot of urban places. And then, of course, not only is that becoming a contaminant on people that do buy illegal drugs of other types, then there's the fact that there's stuff called nitazines, which came out in the 50s, but wasn't really popular because it's like 50 times stronger than fentanyl. But I think fentanyl still has some kind of medicinal use. Like, it can be, I think it's microliters or micrograms or micro something that they get mixed into, like, a drip of certain things. I don't know. I'm just saying that stuff, I think, is still legally used in most hospitals, but as a very controlled substance, because honestly, that's one of those things that, if misused, even by accident, could lead easily to death. Whereas, like, the nitazines, when it came out, it was realized that it's so strong that even if a doctor is using it as a prescription, it's so easy to get the dosage wrong that in order to, like, measure anything out, it's like it'd be too difficult to actually, it'd be too dangerous. And that's the thing, a lot of times we discover certain dangerous chemicals because we're trying to invent a new type of medicine to help people, and then you wind up accidentally like, nope, this doesn't work that way. And sometimes a medicine can be used for something else. I mean, heck, penicillin originally came about because of an accident, and it was technically something that was a bit dangerous, but it now had the ability to cure people, stuff like polio. I mean, heck, there's a lot of trial and error that's gone into a lot of medicine in the past. But at the same time, it's just, especially back in ancient times, a lot of medicine was based more on superstitions and legends rather than actual knowledge. Heck, the guy who originally wound up talking about microorganisms was put in a fucking insane asylum. And Galileo, for the fucking, the Renaissance times. This is back not too long before America really became an independent country. Granted, it's like 100+ years, but still. I'm just saying, we're dealing with a time after Columbus, aren't we? With Galileo. Pretty sure it was like late Renaissance. You know, the idea that, hey, the Earth goes around the sun, not the sun goes around the Earth. Then again, back then, disagreeing with any kind of authority, whether it was the church or the government itself, though in most situations those are just one and the same in the past. I mean, heck, the whole tithing in the Bible is technically just an IRS income tax, because back then the church was the government, and for a while they didn't have a king. And then you had, there was a king, but at that point the church and the king, they're basically so at that point it's like an income tax. Main point I'm just trying to say is this. The descriptions they gave of that Eireil place and the pictures they wind up showing on the internet, obviously, yes, they are the ramblings and the simulations, replications, basically, of memories of people that have incurred brain damage from taking potentially and sometimes definitively deadly doses of a chemical that is extraordinarily dangerous to the human body. But here's the thing. What if what they're seeing is real? Now, granted, regardless of what they're seeing is real or not, they're still receiving horrible brain damage and dying, and experiencing a horrific, hellish hallucination trip that sometimes causes permanent hallucinations of horrifying things that are not fun. Then again, the point remains. Even if my hypothesis is correct, 1, you're still getting horrible brain damage. 2, in that circumstance, you're actually seeing the actual hell. Or at least a vision of it. And here's the thing. The other thing is this. What if at that point the human brain acts as a conduit? Now, of course, this is like, again, crazy batshit. You know, that one dude with the floofy hair on the History Channel saying, aliens! Yes, I'm trying to be funny. My humor sucks. But I'm just saying, it obviously definitely sounds like a tinfoil hat thing. Like, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Alex Jones heard this, and he was like, oh my god, I agree with you completely, Lunar. And I'm like, okay. Which he's definitely has like a whole lot of opinions on a whole lot of things. And I'll tell you this. Definitely some of the things he talks about, oh my god. Something's definitely something wrong. He sounds very angry and very out of his mind. And some of the things he says, like, yeah, definitely 100% fucking wrong. Heck, some of the things he wants to say is like actually really offensive. And I'm like, holy shit. It's like, if I was involved in that, I'd probably want to punch you in the face, Alex. Also, I don't advocate for violence against anybody. I'm just saying, some of the stuff he says is really fucking out there. But I'm just saying, if he heard this, he'd probably agree with it. Okay, earlier we were talking about Ryan Reynolds agreeing with your idea for a Futanari and femboy dating site. Now we're talking about Alex Jones agreeing with you comparing people's drug trips of horrifying hallucinations that are causing horrific brain damage and then killing them from overdose, as well as even permanent damage that occurs even before overdose, to ancient Mesopotamian religions' depictions of hell. And I guess the main thing I'm saying is this. Look at the pictures and listen to the stories of the depictions of the place called Eireil, and then listen to the old stories of historians recounting what the ancient Mesopotamian, Sumerian, Babylonian hell was like. And it seems very similar. Now, of course, one, I don't find hell to be logical or morally justifiable. That being said, it's still interesting to draw connections that other people would probably think to be just completely ridiculous, and comparing what basically random drug-tripped psychotic people who are probably not even half there to writings on stone tablets from thousands of years from before the birth of Christ. Then again, it's also kind of interesting to look at the separations of different things. Like, as you look at the way the Jewish people were, because there's everything that happened in the Bible initially, then you had the stuff with Noah, and then you had a sort of division where the three sons of Noah sort of spread out in different directions. Then eventually you had the whole thing of Abraham and all that. It's always an interesting idea, like, what kind of childhood did Abraham have? What did Abraham know about God when he was a child? Heck, even at the death of Abraham, what all did Abraham know about God? Like, what did he know about it? What were his thoughts on everything? And then, of course, there's things with the generations, Isaac, Jacob, of course, Israel, and then Joseph, and then the whole thing with Egypt. And then, of course, up to this point, the Israelites at that point had, they had been around, before this point, they had already been around all the people of ancient Sumeria. And then you had the time they spent in Egypt. So that was like at least 300 to 400 years of being in a place which at that point was considered like the most powerful nation in the world. And Egypt is actually a pretty large country, because if you look at it on a map, it kind of seems a little deceptively small. But when you actually look at the full scale of how big Egypt is and compare it to other countries, Egypt is really big. It's a very large country. And of course, back then, transportation was a little bit more difficult. So Egypt would have had to seem like an almost limited land. Almost limitless land. Because it would have been so huge. And they spent like such a huge amount of time in there. I mean, that definitely, they had a very strong, like Egypt, like ancient Egyptian religion is known for being, and of course that probably would have influenced a bit of how their thought process on things were. And of course, then Moses, it was like, he spent a long period of time, he was like 40 years old when he left Egypt, right? I don't remember. I might have to look that up sometime, but he spent a long time in Egypt as like one of the wealthiest people in Egypt. He was basically the prince. I mean, he would have definitely had to have a wife and children in Egypt before he left. He probably would have had to leave them behind, wouldn't he? And then, of course, he spent another 40 years in the Prophet Midna and all that. You did not pronounce it all. You said it like the fucking Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess name. Why are you picturing it now? Now I'm picturing Moses talking to Goku and the characters from Twilight Princess Legend of Zelda. Why is Morgan Freeman piloting a boat? I mean, Jim Carrey just showed up with some Pepsi. That's awesome. Everyone's like, what the fuck? I don't know. I got a little distracted, okay? I'm just saying. They spent all that time in Egypt. And then after that, the Assyrians? Syria? Technically there were splits of that nation as well. And then there's the whole, captivity periods. I mean, you had stuff with Babylon, and then Persia. And then, of course, then there's Greece, with all the Greek gods and being around that. And then Rome. And then, of course, Christ. And, of course, you had the whole separation with the Jewish people what was it, Ashkenazi and Sephardic, where one of them, I think it was Ashkenazi, are the more the ones who being more in Europe and maybe parts of Russia, and by Europe I mean mainly like Germany and places like that, like Germany, France, England, Eastern Europe, maybe parts of Russia. And from what I understand, I think these are the people that usually, if someone thinks, like if an average American thinks of what a Jew looks like, that would be the image that pops in your mind with the Ashkenazi people, which would be, again, it would be the Jewish people, because eventually they sort of split with not so much in beliefs, but of course they probably developed a difference in traditions, because there's this stuff with I think it's the Talmud, which is a compendium of old Jewish laws, which includes, of course, the Torah, and I can't remember the name, how you describe the rest of the stuff. I think I shared a video describing that stuff in some playlist somewhere, and of course the way that stuff's written, it's described as a foil, that you have these different segments of the history of the old Bible, and then of course you have these commentaries that are written along that help to, because over time rabbis wind up having debates and discussions about how to follow certain rules and laws and how they apply to the current times. And of course, as time's gone on, the human race has not only exploded in population, I shared a video on that in my community post, but it's also the fact that we've advanced so much scientifically. I mean, think about it. It was like, what, 1910 or something? The Wright brothers made airplanes for the first time? And then, what, 1969 we landed on the fucking moon? I mean, technology as well as social media and sharing information and transportation and human population, everything has it's expanded exponentially at such a fast, and just it's absolutely incredible the way humanity has just changed over, how we have basically changed more. Now, whether that's for the better or worse, that's a different subject, I guess. But we have changed at a faster rate than any other time in history. We have changed so fast. And again, whether that's good or bad, that's another point to be said. But it's like I said, you had the Ashkenazi Jews, which is mainly just Germany, France, England, Eastern Europe, parts of Russia, and of course that also tends to be the most predominant amount of people we wind up knowing about. And they had more, I would say, I mean, it's kind of hard to say which had more connection with, ancient Christianity. Because, I mean, on the one hand, like, I'm pretty sure the Ashkenazis were also mainly in the area of, Greece and Italy. Whereas the Sephardic would be the Jewish people that were in places like Spain, Portugal, Northern Africa, and parts of the Middle East. I mean, and it's like they have, a similar origin. Like, they are all descended from Abraham. But the fact that they separated, and for like 1,000+ years, they lived in different regions of the world where they get more sunlight and are in a warmer climate. That's also, if you look at the food that they have, that the Sephardic Jews have more spicy foods and more tropical sort of things, based on the fact that their people lived in a place of more of a tropical kind of climate. And they also had exposure to other groups of people, since there's a lot of people in Spain, but of course Spain would have been very, very Catholic. Would Spain still count as being very Catholic? I don't know. I don't know if I've ever actually talked to a person actually from Spain. Probably not. I feel like it would be very awkward to ask them a question about, hey, how Catholic is Spain? Like, but then again, it's also more common for people in Europe to have passports and travel around through parts of Europe. Like, you can get on a fucking train and go through like Germany and then France and England. And are there trains that go from England to France? I mean, I assume. I mean, yes, it's a bit of a body of water between them, but I feel that there's probably train. Why don't we look it up on Google? I'm not stopping this already convoluted mess of it, whatever I'm doing, to then look up whether or not there's a train system that leads from France to England. I'm just saying that the entire mainland America is very large. There's a reason everyone drives everywhere. There's not as much public transportation, and it's very big. I would say the United States from the East Coast to the West Coast would be big, the same size as all of Europe, including the eastern bloc of Europe that is, basically bordering, Asia as also kind of part of Asia. But at the same time, we also have to consider Hawaii is not that big, but also Alaska's really big. But also Alaska's a place I don't think I'd ever want to live, because I don't think I'd be able to handle it being that cold. I'm just saying this. Basically, Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews really are not different. They're two groups of people that they're the same people that lived really far apart, and their bodies adapted to the different environments. Plus, you have different foods based on what's available, and you have different people, like different societies that can be an influence. Then, of course, you have the things with the Christian people, where not only do we have the stuff where it's predominantly Catholic at first, and then we had the Protestant Reformation, which, of course, when the Protestant Reformation happened, there was sort of a Jewish Reformation happen, where there was sort of a de-radicalization of certain parts of the Jewish sect, where there's, Orthodox, Messianic, and I think there's something else as well, but I can't remember. Then there's also the fact that originally, Christianity became kind of the religion of the Roman Empire, and the Roman Empire became massive. And then it kind of split between the main part of the Roman Empire and the Byzantium, or Byzantine. It's called Byzantine, dumbass. But I'm just saying, and of course, over time, especially since communication wasn't that good back then, I mean, every time you have to try to talk to someone, you have to send someone 3 months by horse. You're not really going to be able to communicate very much. So over time, people not only are in different environments, but they have to spend hundreds of years of trying to make independent decisions on things, and people aren't going to come to the same conclusion. Also, I remember there being, I forget what it's called. Was it Istanbul? Wasn't Istanbul that capital of, we had the Roman Empire was the Vatican, right? Wasn't the other one that was the Byzantine, wasn't that Istanbul? No, I think it changed at one point. It was Istanbul, then it became a different place, but I can't remember. I also remember there being a third faction of the church way back then. It was, I think it's the Orthodox group? Or is that the one of the Byzantine? So we know there's the Vatican, which that's the Roman Catholic. But then there was the Byzantine, which technically it started as Rome, but it's split into two nations, and it changed over time. So there are differences in how they do things. And then there was also another division that was somewhere, I think in Russia. I can't remember what it's called. There's a really big, amazing, beautiful church, I think in Russia. And everyone's like, there's probably many beautiful churches in Russia. Probably. I haven't seen them. Then again, I would never go to Russia because I don't think Russia would like me. That being said, I have nothing against Russia. Except maybe I feel like it would probably be too cold, and they would probably lock me in a gulag. Because I just don't think Russia would like me very much. What the fuck are we talking about? I'm just saying, I don't have no plans to ever go to Russia, okay? I don't think Russia would like me. and two, I don't think they would be welcoming to me. But more importantly, the Russian language. Oh my god, I've looked at it. It's like, it is the most confusing thing I've ever looked at. Like, I look at that, and I'm like, there's no way in hell I could ever learn that. In addition to that, there's nothing in Russia that I've seen that I think, interests me, that makes me think I would be happy there. So that's the thing. I just don't think I'd be happy over there. And I don't think they would like me being there either. I don't think I'd be welcome. But my point being that apparently there is a very... I think I will look this up. We'll look up the thing about the train, too. Who out there likes trains? Type trains in the chat if you like trains. Okay, good. Google. Okay, Stop trying to advertise things to me. Okay, is there a train from England to France? There's only one train running directly from London to Paris, the Eurostar high-speed train. So that's what makes choosing the right train a bit easier. This train is seriously speedy. On average, the journey takes 2 hours 28 minutes. At its fastest, 2 hours 60 minutes. How far is it from England to France? Okay, you're showing me a thing from the middle of England to the middle of France. But apparently it's like 10 hours and 40 minutes, but that's not what I want. How far is it from England to France across the English Channel? 20 miles! 20.5 miles. The English Channel is the body of water separating England and France, and the 33 kilometers, or 20.5 miles swim across it, is the world's most historically significant and iconic marathon swim. I will say this. I remember one point being trained as a BSA lifeguard, which I have not been swimming in like a decade, and I don't think I remember how to swim, and I don't think I have any physical health or ability to swim, anything other than just a little doggy paddle. But at one point I was doing actual train to save people thing and could swim a mile straight without stopping. But 20 miles? Oh my god! How many people alive are even physically healthy enough to do that? I don't even think I could swim a quarter mile right now without going out of breath and being like, please throw me a fucking inner tube. Who the fuck swims 33 kilometers? If you do, you should be an Olympic athlete. Oh my god. Standards and traditions of channel swimming inspire the global sport of unassisted marathon swimming. That sounds dangerous. People have to die doing that, don't they? What was the thing with the church? Probably oldest church. I think it's in Russia. Oldest church in Russia. The Cathedral of Saint Sophia. And I assume the rest of that word is the thing in Russian, which I don't... It's like there's 7 different N's, and they look different. And there's like 5 O's that, like, and not like, oh, there's 5 letter O's. There's like 5 different species of the letter O. And C's in places that shouldn't exist, and a tilde that's like stabbing a dude, and there's Papyrus from Undertale. What is the famous church in Russia? Is that the same one? St. Basil's Cathedral. The Cathedral of the Valley of the Blessed Russian stuff I can't even begin to read. Like, there's so many symbols in here, I'm like, I don't even know what sound that would make. Commonly known as the Orthodox Church in Red Square, Moscow. And it's one of the most popular culture. It looks... Yeah, I remember seeing that in pictures in the past. Honestly, how on earth did they build these things? The same thing as like the Notre Dame church back in France, which I've never seen, which I probably never see because I don't think I'll ever go to Europe or any of those places. But though I am trying to learn to speak German. Don't get me wrong, I do also want to learn how to speak Japanese, and then maybe French, and then maybe Hebrew. Though, of course, back to this. But mainly I'm just trying to say the separation between, because they started having a church all the way in Russia, and of course, again, how are you going to communicate with the churches in Byzantine and Rome? And of course, things change as, of course, King James, printing press, and of course, you had different versions of the Bible, because you had a lot of confusion about what was going to be the initial Bible, plus confusion about what you were going to include from the old Jewish texts, and how things would be interpreted and combined, and what was a reliable resource. And then you had not only, again, technological requirements, limitations, distances, ideological differences, what was considered. And again, back then you couldn't really disagree with a king or a priest. It was basically blasphemy and heresy. Like, everything was considered the same. Like, heresy was just disagreeing with authority. Oh, you disagreed with the king. You disagreed with the priest. You disagree. And then, of course, sacrilege is actually, damaging a religious thing. And then, of course, we had blasphemy, which is actually, as I just burp, fart, whatever. I have to do both, whatever. Anyway. Yeah, I ate Taco Bell. Okay. You're not here. You can't smell it. Just saying. You had the stuff that started off initially in... Because here's the thing. A lot of times with the old Jewish texts, it started off, obviously, in Hebrew. And, of course, you had people that were around with the different Canaanite tongues. And you're around places with the Egyptian languages. And then, of course, I'm not even sure what languages they spoke in Babylon, ancient Iraq, or languages they spoke in ancient Persia. And people say, oh, Persian, yeah, but I don't really know what that would sound like, or if there's even anyone still speaks that nowadays. I can't remember. And then, of course, there's the exposure to Aramaic, Greek, and then, of course, Roman, and then Arabic, and then, of course, the multitude of languages as travel between places expanded. Heck, same thing with the Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews. Sephardic Jews, their Hebrew took on, I think it started to mix with Spanish. So I think it's it's still Hebrew, but it's like, think of here's the thing. Ancient English. Like, if you took people nowadays and had them try to read literal old school Shakespeare that hasn't been updated at all, you'd be reading that, and even though it's the same language, I don't think anybody would understand it. Same we took someone back at Shakespeare's time and brought them here and had them speak to just your average person. It didn't even matter what, and we have 40 plus dialects here in America, and there's 7 in England. And then, of course, there's people in other parts of the world that speak English predominantly. They have their own, Australia. But, of course, Australia have their own way of speaking English, where you can tell there's an accent. And then, of course, there's other countries where most countries, everyone tends to know multiple languages. And English is just sort of a convenient language for people to know. But at the same time, their predominant normal language is their language of their home. So the reason why this bears mention is that, of course, they would have an accent because their main language is not that, or it's not even their first language. But even then, there's people that learn English at a young age, but of course, their predominant language of their land is something else. But then there's places, like I said, mentioned, like England, Australia, and America, where the predominant language is English, and it's usually the only language most of the residents speak. That being said, despite it being the only language, it's, like I said, there's 40 different dialects in America. I would say that I think I would be able to understand anybody who speaks English nowadays, except for maybe somebody from New Jersey or West Virginia. So certain parts of, Brooklyn, New York, New Jersey, those areas of like New York and New Jersey, as well as places like in deep West Virginia and Virginia, I might not be able to understand them. Just because you hear the, at least recordings of what they sound like, and you're like, huh, I can't understand. It's my language and I can't understand it. Then, of course, the same thing can be true sometimes of other people speaking English. They can accentuate the wrong sounds, and it could not sound like a word you're familiar with. Like, I think karaoke is a thing. Like, there's different ways of pronouncing this. But main thing, I would say the languages I want to learn German, Japanese, French, and Hebrew in that order. But of course, like I said, there's different types of Hebrews. There's the original Hebrew, and then there's the Hebrew that Sephardic Jews had, which is a Hebrew that's kind of mixed into Spanish. And then you have the Ashkenazi form of Hebrew, which is, from what I understand, it's Hebrew that's been mixed with German or Dutch, or everyone's like, that's the same thing. I think there might be a difference, I can't remember. Everyone's like, you're trying to learn this language. I'm trying to learn the German language and trying to base my accent off of German metal bands like Eisbrecher and Rammstein and E Nomine. I'm basically doing my best to sound like Till Lindemann from Rammstein. That's how I'm learning Rammstein. How I'm learning German. Okay. I made a video called Keine Liebe if you want to, hear my attempt at German. Maybe I'll share that too. Okay, let's just type this here. No, B, not a V. Grant would understand what I'm going to upload it, but still. 2 hours and 12. Fucking fuck. 2 hours, 12 minutes? But okay, then of course that's Yiddish. It's German. So it's Hebrew mixed with German. You have Yiddish. Then again, also, like most languages, sometimes there's languages that use words that don't actually exist. For example, computer, automobile. Heck, there's times like Gesundheit. It's a German word that's a common thing that Americans say. Like, granted, yes, the expression's still the same, God bless you, and some people will say God bless you. But predominantly, Americans, if they hear you sneeze, they will tell you Gesundheit. It's just a common thing, but then again, that's to be expected. America is not only a very large nation with a very large population, but we are a melting pot. We are sort of a combination of all cultures. And it's both an issue of people coming together in solidarity, but also, there's always going to be people in any group that are going to be hateful or racist or some shit, but that's in every land. Honestly, the media just tends to play it up because it makes it easier for rich and powerful in the government to control people. After all, if everyone are fighting each other, then heck, remember that movie They Live, where they get the sunglasses and see the politicians and stuff as space aliens and you see like magazines and billboards are just saying obey. Yes. And then like you have later a video, like there's a fight between a white guy and a black guy, and it's like, no, the racism is just how the rich people are controlling you. It's how the government's controlling you. So you guys aren't working together. Then again, there's a movie called The Network that was interesting about like just the way that stuff is. And what was the other thing? Like there was it was really. Then again, I remember a really cool old anime where I can't remember the name of the anime either. It was like the 70s. It was a really old anime. It was really cool. It started off with this woman who was like living in a high-rise apartment, and then she let like a little bird out of a cage, and then she jumped out of a high-rise window and killed herself. But still, well, that's a dark end thing. The thing was like it was a completely peaceful world, but people were sort of isolated and controlled, and it caused psychological issues to people. Though it kind of reminds me of the fan fictions written by Stefan Gagne, Gagne, if I remember right, I made a video about it or so, but yeah, it's not how his name doesn't sound the way it looks like it would be pronounced. But he wrote some really long stories. Oh, you guys remember the Chichi Warhammer 40k? That was a really cool audio novel too. But there's like 100+ hours to listen to. Holy God! And of course, it's better if you actually have already watched Evangelion and familiar with the Warhammer games. Though I don't play the Warhammer tabletop game, but I read the books. I like just reading. I don't know what we're fucking talking about. I think at one point I was just trying to say the thing about, the DPH stuff. Like, what if the stuff that people see while they're getting the horrific brain damage that is killing them and ruining their lives, and perhaps ending their lives, what if the things that they are seeing are real? What if it is not only allowing them to see hell, as in, because it does seem very similar to the ancient Sumerian depictions of hell. Of course, like I said, I'm a Christian, I believe God. I'm just saying it's interesting to see the depictions of an ancient religion as the afterlife of hell being described almost note for note by fucking drug addicts suffering severe brain damage. And it'd be one thing if it was just one offhand person, but the fact that it's multiple people. And again, the reason why I say the brain damage thing over and over is because, again, it's an extraordinarily dangerous thing that people are doing. And there is no reason for anyone to ever do that or glorify it in any way. And it is extremely dangerous and likely to kill you. And even if it doesn't kill you, it'll probably make you wish that you had died. And it's just no part of that sounds pleasant at all. And especially if my hypothesis is true, I mean, that means you're literally, like what, the movie Event Horizon. You're fucking going to literal hell. And more likely, and that brings more to the idea of the whole giving your soul to Hatman thing. And again, this is all just stupid, postulation. Here I am just postulating. Lunar, Dragon Ball Postulate. It's like, I suppose this thing about this. But it's just, which again, we've gone completely fucking off topic. Oh my God. But the main point is this. It's just interesting to draw conclusions. And again, is there any foundation to this at all? Probably not. It's probably not founded at all. It's like, my hypothesis is probably absolutely not true or have any basis in reality. But it's just that, would supposition be the correct word? Not sure. But just sort of supposition of that, hey, what if the people that are taking this horrible drug that is causing irreversible, life-threatening, and life-ending brain damage is actually allowing people to, that what they're hallucinating is actually real? And the other thing is this, that you are actually seeing literal hell, that you are actually seeing the literal Sumerian afterlife, and that the shadow people you're seeing are actually literally demons, or malevolent ghosts, or malevolent spirits. Like I said, this is all just sort of a what-if sort of thing. We've just gone off topic from talking about Dragon Ball to talking about drug trip videos, to where I'm listening to the descriptions people give, and I'm like, that sounds very much like the same descriptions that you get from the descriptions of the ancient Sumerian afterlife, as well as many old religions, the way they sort of describe certain things. Now, I'm not saying that would discount, even if it were true, any other faith, whether Christian, Jewish, Muslim, or anything. But what I am saying is that hypothetically in that situation, that the people suffering horrible brain damage in those situations are, one, actually seeing hell, and two, that in addition to being able to see hell, that the same way it gives the person brain damage and explodes the transformer and destroys it, what if the human brain then acts as sort of a the human brain, the human soul. Because imagine like the way the different chemicals affect the brain and the mood and the way the person is. Then the question is this: what effect is it having on the soul? And are there any things that would not affect the human brain that would have a negative effect or a positive effect on a human soul? Simply put is this: the same way different chemicals or certain things can influence the human brain, how likely is it that there are supernatural, or that's depending on who you are out there, whether you would say aliens or certain, I don't know, electromagnetic waves of whatever bullshit, or solar flares, or however you describe anything, or heck, the Chaos Head game was talking about, the G spot. I have said that in a wrong way that makes it sound like something completely different. But GE levels, to where like how the moon affects certain things to throw off gravity that affects the human psyche or whatever bullshit. But the main point being is, what things would be out there that would actually affect, that would not be chemical, that would actually have an effect on how the human brain processes? Especially if you were to look back into things like demonic possession or things like that through the Bible, then the idea is, if you could have taken a person from back then and put them in an MRI machine, or take a blood sample and chemically study everything, what would you find? Now, of course, I've had people and preachers say that when I was mentioning a thing about a form of bacteria that can cause people to think they're a cow and make them eat grass, which I've tried to look that up since, and I can't find any evidence of my statement, but I still remember that being a thing, but I can't find evidence of that again. So, but the main point, they were trying to say I'm trying to disprove God. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to state a physical thing that actually explains what was mentioned there. So then the idea would be, simply put, 1, don't do drugs. 2, people doing these drugs are suffering terrible brain damage. But 3 is this: if the hypothesis, which is really I'm not putting any faith in myself, and granted, not just faith in myself as a person. I'm not putting any faith in the hypothesis that I'm saying. Basically, I consider it a wackadoodie, crazy bullshit idea. But the idea being that, 1, there may have been something similar to this chemical in, say, natural plants that were in ancient Mesopotamia that would have invoked people seeing things like this. 2, that the human brain and the human soul can be a conduit between the physical and the spiritual sort of realms, if we're talking about things in different dimensions, and also if you were to describe the difference between the world that we see physically as well as the world of supernatural by things like 4 dimensions or string theory or quantum mechanics, or even trying to describe it as a similar thing to the difference between the world we're aware of right here and the digital one inside the internet, or heck, just the way the chemicals are in the brain, how different things can produce such drastic effects on what people see, as well as the idea that the kind of crazy dreams we've all had about all sorts of things, that you can have dreams that seem just as real life, and that during the time you don't even know it's a dream, and that even your memory of the dream itself is just like, it's very interesting the way things are. Or just take ASMR, the fact that something that's just sounds coming out of headphones and pictures you're looking at can evoke emotions out of you, whether it's to relax you and help you go to sleep, or just hearing something say something positive. But yeah, I'm just saying, 1, what if, so this would be my hypothesis, that 1, well, no matter what the case is, whether the hypothesis is true or is not, people that do these kinds of drugs would wind up getting permanent brain damage. and that if the hypothesis, like, no, regardless if the hypothesis is true or false, the people are getting horrific brain damage, experiencing a horrific experience, and are probably going to die. Horribly. If my hypothesis is false, then it's all purely in their heads, and they're hallucinating everything. If it's true, there's still a possibility that some of it's just hallucinations and shit in their head. But it's also supposing that, one, they are actually seeing things that are real, that their hallucinations that only they see actually do physically exist. That they're seeing another dimension that is actually real, they're seeing another world that is actually real, and they are seeing malevolent, violent, hateful, predatory entities that are also real. And that it could be that the human brain and soul is functioning as a conduit between the things, and not only is it allowing the human to see these other dimensions, but it's actually feeding it. That it could be the person taking these things is actually empowering both hell and the malevolent demonic entities. And to go even further is to say this, that it could be that when somebody is basically taking brain damaging levels of these very dangerous chemicals that will most certainly end in their death, that the human brain under these circumstances, whether it's the human brain, the human body, the human nervous system, the human soul, because I would also say that your soul is being affected by these chemicals as well. I would say that it winds up becoming sort of a burning torch in the middle of the forest. I think that Kyle Hill dude was talking about it one time in a video about the idea of the Fermi paradox and the dark forest theory, that the idea of why we can't find life in the universe, aside from the fact that it's just that fucking big, is the fact that it's like a dark forest. If you're in a dark forest, you're not going to see the other living things in the forest. Not because there aren't tons of squirrels and bugs and birds everywhere, and raccoons and all sorts of things, but it's because everything's potentially predator and prey. Simply put, if you're out there, if hypothetically the universe were like a dark forest, then literally the thing where we're constantly sending out, messages and gold plate discs with messages to the stars and probes and stuff is incredibly dangerous, because it implies that the only reason that other sentient races of aliens wouldn't be talking to us would be because either they themselves are scared, at which point, if they might take a risk and send us a message to Earth and be like, shut up, just turn off all the shit, stop advertising yourselves. Or it could be that the dangerous aliens that would be potentially dangerous to us have already made contact. I mean, there's a whole Roswell Area 51 shit. Like, I'd be a terrible fucking politician or FBI thing. Because at the end of the day, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to find proof of aliens, and I'm just going to share it publicly. That'd be my platform. It's like, I'm going to find the government's secrets. And it's like, sir, you cannot run for Congress while saying that. It's like, oh, what would you like to say as part of your speech? It's like, I am Lunar D8. And today I will talk to all of you about tentacle hentai and Where's Waldo books. I'm just saying, Where's Waldo, great book series. I don't know why it sort of disappeared. It was really cool to try to search for things and look. But there's just so much shit aside, because usually you don't notice because you're just looking for Waldo, that you don't notice the other shit going on. Because there's times where there was a rowboat and there was tentacles coming up grabbing people. And I'm like, I've seen enough hentai to know where this is going. I'm just saying, there's some crazy shit that goes on in the Where's Waldo books that has nothing to do with Waldo at all. I'm just saying, like, what if the people doing those chemicals, it's actually changing sort of a signal that the human soul is sending out that attracts malevolent, hateful, violent, malicious, demonic entities to them. So it could be that the person, if they don't do the drugs, are less likely to be noticed by an evil spirit, like a creepypasta sort of monster, cryptid, whatever. But it could be that but here's the thing, regardless, like if the hypothesis false, which again, I have no confidence in this hypothesis being true. It's just sort of random bullshit thought in my mind. But it's just like, if the hypothesis is false, then it just means everything the person sees is purely hallucination, and that's it. But they're still getting horrible brain damage. In the same regard, if it's true, then they're actually seeing literal hell and literal demons, and they're getting brain damage. But it's not just that they are able to see literal hell and literal demons. There's also the implication of how common are demons or evil ghosts or evil spirits, how common and plentiful and how powerful are such beings, and how common are they? And here's the thing. Is hell something that's always sort of there, same as heaven, in regard to, and of course, then we're going between the non-physical, physical, is there a physical place to go to with certain things, yada yada yada. The main point being is this. In addition to those chemicals, of course, frying the brain, giving people horrible brain damage, and allowing them to see hell and malevolent spirits. Could it be that it actually, think of like hell like a giant floating island that is broken up into chunks, that's, if it was all combined, would be like the size of Jupiter. But it's broken into millions of pieces that are like floating amorphous bubble island cities that are like phasing through parts of the earth. Again, random bullshit thought. Heck, who knows? Maybe certain things do have magnetism and bullshit underneath the earth. Has to do with how the spiritual realm of hell can fucking exist. I don't know. But then again, part of hell could be always described as a lake of fire. That's just fucking lava. That's just a fucking volcano. But then again, I mean, back in the past, how would you describe a fucking volcanic eruption and everything around it to people that had never even heard of a volcano before? I think that's really cool to have the various books about the different types of clouds, and the way the weather works, and the way volcanoes work. And of course, I'm still the person of the opinion that, hell is unjustifiable. I've described and talked about in the past. I'm trying not to go off topic anymore. I don't know what the fucking topic is anymore, though, but I'm just trying not to jump topics anymore. But that's the point. Like, the idea is this. What if it not only then draws that dimension to you, to where you're actually more so synchronizing your soul with actual hell while you're still alive, but it could be that also you're turning your soul into a radio broadcast tower that's emitting a signal that's just sort of attracting demonic and malevolent spirits to you like a fucking fire in the middle of a dark forest. It'd be like, say there's a forest with a bunch of evil robbers and murderers, and you're in there and they don't know you're there, and then you light a fire and just lay out all your money and your food and start cooking a delicious meal. They're likely to come and murder you and steal your food. Just saying. One, if my hypothesis is true, not only are you giving yourself horrific brain damage and having a horrific experience and dying, but you are actually exposing yourself to, malevolent demons and to literal hell. Though, of course, people can always define different things in different ways, and of course I can have books like The Savage World, Pathfinders, Dungeons & Dragons, Warhammer, and it's just kind of interesting to go with the various ideas with the warp, or quantum unlocking, or like Stargate SG-1 stuff, or the way different places use faster than light travel. Like, different, like Star Wars, Star Trek, they do different ways to try to explain how FTL would work. And some of it is based off of actual science, and a lot of it's just based off just complete fucking bullshit. That's maybe half as much bullshit as, my random bullshit thought. And again, I don't do drugs. I am never going to do that kind of shit. And at the end of the day is this. Yeah, don't do that shit. It's extremely dangerous. Why would you do that? It's going to kill you. It's going to give you horrible brain damage. So don't do that. What was I talking about? Alright, but yeah. Anyway, after the Bibles were sort of organized in really about 300 AD by the old churches at that time, keep in mind. You then had it sort of later on get sort of translated from, you had Aramaic, you had Greek, and then you wound up going into Latin. And for a long time, the Bible was primarily in Latin. And then, of course, you had a translation where it went to English, King James Version, and, of course, disagreements on that stuff as well. Then, of course, it's just interesting to look through and read everything in the Bible anyway. And I do suggest that to everyone, even if you don't believe in God, just to read the Bible. Though I would say, no matter who you are, a good starting point is just Psalms and Proverbs. Because at the end of the day is this. Even if you don't believe in God, Psalms and Proverbs can have very useful information for you. But it definitely helps if you do believe. But at the end of the day, I'm also the kind of person that simply put is this. I think torture is wrong. I think the idea of a hell is wrong. I think the idea of hell is unjustifiable. And I've gone into much, much more detail about that in the past in many different ways, even though I kept getting off topic with that. And also I'm of the opinion that this. I don't think anybody should be punished in this world or the next for who they do or do not believe in. Simply put, if someone is an atheist or Hindu or one of the many other religions that I'm failing to list that is not Christian, I don't think they should go to hell for having a difference of opinion. That's usually largely based on what part of the world they were born in. At the end of the day, like I said, most important things is just common sense, logic, kindness, and even then, people would say it's very much a stretch of both logic and common sense to contemplate a lot of random things, I think, whereas I make comparisons of things that really people feel there is no comparison to. Or the fact that I do consider the Bible historical fact. Like everything written in the Bible actually happened. Now that being said, are there details left out? Yes. Are there things that I don't understand? Correct. At the same time, do I base my morality off of it? No. I base my morality off of kindness, logic, and common sense. So I do disagree with a lot of things, and it's strictly interesting to go through and just read lists of just compiled, condensed, concise lists of all the various mitzvos or religious commandments of the past. I mean, heck, there was a rule basically saying not to have sex with your wife if she's on her period, or saying you should never shave your beard, or eat bacon, or cut the hair over your temples, or stuff like that. Or stuff about how to, every family has to pay a half a shekel to the church every year. Or stuff about, laws about, okay, make sure not to be too cruel to your slaves. Or, if your slave is Jewish, you should free him after 6 years. Be kind to someone. It's lots of it's just interesting to try to learn the way things were back then. But again, you wouldn't be allowed to disagree with that then. If you disagree with the government or the church, which usually were the one and the same, you'd pretty much be put to death. At that point, it was this. You agree with the people in charge. You really didn't have free speech or the right to disagree. And I do strongly disagree with that idea of governance where it's just do as you're told. Because at that point, no one's going to care about right or wrong. You just do what the people with power tell you to do. Heck, a lot of times people just, oh, you believe what you're told to believe. You don't really care about the stuff. You just like, okay, you made the person in charge of your church happy. And again, they're supposed to be the people that are experts in it. But at the same time, people have to have some amount of critical thinking to think for themselves. But again, there's a huge disagreement with a lot of people out there about, what is critical thinking. Heck, I remember there was this, I think she was like mid-20s. There was this black woman. She wound up saying to me that, Abraham Lincoln, that America only freed slaves because it made us look bad when Abraham Lincoln killed Hitler. And this woman had a bachelor's degree from a college. And honestly believed that Abraham Lincoln had killed Hitler. So, that's concerning. But that's a whole different subject. Main point is this. I think it's kind of fucked up that slavery ever existed in any part of the world. And people could say, oh, it was just the way the societies functioned. And that's kind of the point. The point is that a lot of rules between all the different nations of any group of people were built around the ideas of efficacy, of Machiavellianism, before thousands of years before that guy was even born. It was what worked. It's what made a nation more powerful. I mean, at the end of the day is this. You need people, you definitely couldn't have people being gay. Because not only did you not have antibiotics or stuff like that, but also it made it harder to control people. I mean, if you have a family to worry about, you're more likely to do whatever the government tells you so you can protect your family and also be rewarded with extra benefits to get said family to be well taken care of and for honors and stuff. Especially if the people in charge of the government can control who's allowed to get married and why, then at that point you literally have to do what the priests tell you to do or else you're not allowed to date anybody. And of course, a lot of rules are very extreme, but again, it just becomes more an issue of control. And you want a population to increase at all times. Because at the end of the day, you need more people for cannon fodder and workers. To build up soldiers. Which is just a fucked up way to look at things. It's just looking at people as a resource, not caring about individuals, or it's simply what you do what the government tells you, do what the priest tells you, do what you're told. And it's like, at that point, your own life really has no value. You exist for the purpose of your society. And again, it's effective for building up a society. The system of rules are very useful for, one, making the king more powerful and more wealthy, for making the church more powerful and more wealthy, for keeping the average person in line and keeping them obedient, and for overall just making the nation more powerful and more combat capable in regard to everyone else, so that you can basically be an empire and conquer everyone around you and continue to grow. The idea is that a lot of the rules are not based off of morality or ethics. They're based off of efficiency. They're based off of what makes the nation more powerful. And of course, there's just so many laws that are just on so many ridiculous things. And I could go on forever on that. But again, I'm trying not to talk about this stuff because, we're going on 3 hours. Who the fuck would listen to this video this long? It's meant to be 30 seconds. But the main point is this. After they translated the Bible into Latin, then the different languages, and just there's disagreements, and it's just I think the most important thing is this, for people to have an open mind. Like, I believe in God, but I'm not going to have the opinion that somebody of a different faith should be hurt in any way for disagreeing with me. I don't think anyone should be discriminated against or harmed in any way. And I don't think anyone should go to hell for having a disagreement about whether or not God exists or not. Or having a disagreement about, the nature of Jesus or the way the Holy Ghost and God is. Now, do I think it would be wrong for someone to be insulting God and all that? Yes. But that's a different thing. But there's a difference between, blasphemy, which you are having a malicious disagreement where you are intending insult, as opposed to simply having a difference of opinion where you don't mean any insult, you just simply have a difference of opinion on things. And at the end of the day, I think Rene Descartes was actually the one who said that the best way to be sure of something is to first to doubt everything. Like I said, I like a lot of philosophy from a lot of people, but I basically listen to what everyone has to say. But as I read Rene Descartes and Johnny Silverhand, yes, I'm making a cyberpunk joke. Fucking Keanu Reeves. I think Keanu Reeves actually would be a great president. Just based on the fact that I feel disappointed with everyone who's been a president for the entirety of my life. Heck, I think the last good president we had was JFK. I don't know. But yeah, I was saying like the Flanderization of Goku thing. Because initially, like I said, Goku was not supposed to be dumb. It's just... Same way, Chichi. Goku was not supposed to be unromantic initially. Of course, in time, that probably changed a bit. And again, Kira Toriyama, it's his manga. It was his choice how things wanted to be. But it's like, a lot of times... Like, there was times we made the androids, whereas editors were, and the publishers and people were disagreeing about what would make a good marketable villain. Because at one point it was like, Dr. Giro, 19 and 20 were supposed to be the final androids that they were going to fight. The problem is, editor was like, yeah, that kind of looks like they look kind of dumb. They're just a couple old guys. And then it's like, okay, what about 17, 18? Like, I can't take them seriously. They're just hot. It's like, okay. That being said, I think I shared a picture at some point of Android 18. Yeah, she is very sexy. Yes, I started imagining her naked. Then, of course, we had Cell. But then we're like, oh, no, she's too scary. And we made him into Imperfect Cell. And they're like, yeah, he's too ugly now. And then Perfect Cell. Like, okay, cool. Then, of course, there's disagreements on certain things as far as from the movies. But again, even though the movies aren't canon, I like that. Oh, right, I was talking about that earlier, too. Main point is this. They kind of flanderized Goku. And where they just sort of kept harping up on him not being romantic with Chichi and him being dumb about things. And like I said, initially he wasn't supposed to be dumb. He was supposed to be smart. There's no reason why he wouldn't be smart outside. It's like, oh, he fell on his head. I mean, that's not technically canon half the time anymore. It was sort of shoehorned in Dragon Ball Z. But I'm not even sure that even happened in the manga. But main point being is this. In an era with dinosaurs and houses that go in buildings and space technology, there's no reason why they can't fix that with people that are aliens with improved biology and sensor beams. And even Shenron Resurrection. I mean, at the point where you get brought back from the dead by a dragon. I mean, not only should you, recover limbs that are lost, but, say, if you had any kind of damage to your brain via, hitting your head, falling off a waterfall as a kid, shouldn't that be recovered? Shouldn't Goku Like, what if, like, even if that one thing was a thing that was an impact on Goku, then shouldn't he, when he had came back to life from King Kai's, shouldn't he have suddenly been a lot smarter? Then again, part of me still thinks it would be interesting if, Goku had actually, studied a lot more stuff and was a bit smarter. Or like Gohan kept training. Or like, what if Goku married Bulma? Or heck, what if Goku... Like, what if Dr. Brief started making the gravity chamber stuff? And Goku and Yamcha, those guys started trying to use that stuff early on, even before they met Tien. I'm just saying they Flanderized Goku, because you're like, what do you mean by Flanderize? Ned Flanders from Simpsons. Originally, the man was simply supposed to be a religious man. It wasn't supposed to be his only defining characteristic. Ned Flanders was supposed to be your average guy. Sort of your juxtaposition, your comparison, your baseline to measure Homer by. Ned Flanders was not supposed to be an overly religious person. He was supposed to be the average man. And everyone nowadays feels like Homer Simpson was supposed to be an average man. And maybe it was. But at least I remember it as, Homer Simpson was supposed to be a caricature of what was expected of people. He was not supposed to be what a normal person was. Ned Flanders was supposed to be a representation of what the normal person was. After all, Homer does lots of things that would be considered much less than ethical. But the thing is this. As time went on, they kept playing into that one trait about him being a churchman over and over and over and over again. And it's certain things with his personality, where they made Ned Flanders one-dimensional. They made something that was originally only supposed to be a small part of his personality, they made it into a defining characteristic. Same thing with Goku. He was not supposed to be dumb. But if over time, it was a quick, easy laugh. We'll make the audience laugh with this, and it was just a quick, easy laugh. But the problem is it kept going and going, and it became a running thing that eventually became canon because it kept getting reinforced. And it's kind of the idea that Yamcha's not actually a bad fighter. But the fact of the matter that you wound up having not only a bit of a really not in his favor situation occurred at the start of Dragon Ball Z, and then of course the whole fandom and everything kind of piled on that, and it just sort of reinforced it. That Yamcha was just seen that way by everybody. But in the day, that just, it worked for the story they're going for, and of course, the story could have gone in many directions. It's just the way that story went. But it's always interesting to imagine a situation where Yamcha, was able to be much more successful in his training. But then there's the idea of thirsty. But then there's the idea of just, they Flanderized Goku. They made him one-dimensional. They made him seem really dumb. When initially he wasn't supposed to be stupid. It's just like, why would you expect him to do calculus? He's living in the middle of the woods. It's not that he's dumb and can't learn calculus. It's that he really doesn't have the exposure to it. And you might say, well, there are certain things with the world he didn't understand. Yes, not only was he young, but he really didn't have that much human interaction. He didn't have that much opportunity to be sociable. So, of course, he's not really going to be street smart about things. So they made him seem overly dumb and overly naive. So at the same time, yes, I understand where it's coming from, but I feel like it got overplayed to the point that they lost control of it. Heck, same as saying earlier, Gozar, he did, again, a pretty low quality, lowbrow humor jokes that were all over the place, and it was just one dude doing all the voices. But it still made laughs. I still enjoyed it. But there was something Gozar said. The same way, Team 4-Star kind of ragged on Krillin a whole bunch. And over time, it probably influenced the writers of Team 4-Star to sort of become biased against Yamcha and Krillin much more than they should be. What I mean by that is Gozar, he really picked on Gohan a lot and made fun of Gohan. Much worse than Team 4-Star did to Yamcha and Krillin. Basically made him the butt of just about every joke. To the point that Gozar, who was a huge fan of Dragon Ball Z, would go back and watch the original Dragon Ball Z, and he would start bitching at Gohan. And he started to realize, oh my god, I'm being a bad influence on myself. That me making this show where I'm making fun of Gohan, a character that I actually do respect and like, I'm being a bad influence on myself, and I'm making myself hate this character that I love and I respect. There's also another thing with Goku. Initially, and again, I could always be misremembering this, Akira Toriyama, original Dragon Ball was more geared to comedy, but a bit toward fighting. Whereas Dragon Ball Z was geared to be a much more action-oriented with a little bit of humor. It's more about those high-intensity fights. But the thing is this. Those high-intensity fights. But the thing is this. He didn't write stuff about being romantic with Chichi. Why? First off, the main demographic for the show was kids. You can't have Batman killing people for a lot of reasons. One of the main reasons, of course, if you look at the in-universe reason, Batman can't be killing people because... You look at the in-universe reason, Batman can't kill people because he is a psychologically extreme individual who, that if he were to give in to the killing thing, it would not only destroy the honor that he has established as Batman, but also the idea is that Batman himself, Bruce Wayne, would not be able to psychologically cope with the stress of that. But an out-of-universe reason for the real world about why you can't have a cartoon about Batman killing people is because it's kids watching it. You can't be having a show for kids to watch in which the main character is murdering people. Because, kids are impressionable. And you can't have a cartoon where, the main character that the kids fantasize about being killing people. Same regard with Goku. It wasn't an issue of killing so much as, of course, you had to be somewhat limited about how violent things will be. You can't have like Baki, Hanma, Baki, the grappler, levels of fucking violence and gore. Or let alone Berserk in your Dragon Ball Z. That would be much harder to market to, Toonami in the middle of an afternoon slot on kids on the, Cartoon Network. But here's the thing. One, not only did you have to worry about that rating issue, one, he didn't want his show to become that, but also, he didn't write the stuff about the lovey-dovey stuff with him and Chichi because Akira Toriyama, one, did not want his story to be a rom-com. He did not want it to become a slice of life. He did not want it to become a romance story. And we're not talking like lewd hentai shit either. We're talking just, he didn't want it to become like a romance lovey-dovey story. One, because he didn't want his story to be that. He wanted his story to be an action story about the adventures of Son Goku fighting against warriors like Vegeta and Frieza and Cell and Boo. He wanted it to be action, fights, awesome. He didn't want it to revolve around romance and lovey-dovey stuff. He also felt that he didn't have the talent for it. Now, I would have disagreed with him. I think Akira Toriyama could have done anything he wanted to put his mind to. I think he's incredible at the stories he's made. And that's another thing. It's like, at one point I wanted to do like a thing describing the different power levels, having a knowledge ahead of time of everything in GT and Super, so that you can reimagine how power levels and transformations would work. So in a way that you can try to keep the numbers as low as possible and avoid going into the domain of E, the realm of exponents to describe power levels. And then what power they have to be multiplied by for a transformation. To try to keep it minimal. So you remake the original Dragon Ball to where you try to keep the same story. Because again, it's tempting to try to change something. But the idea is what's it take in order to keep everything that ever happened in the story accurate, but to change the power scaling and the way power levels are to where they are coherent. Now, of course, at some point in Dragon Ball Z, especially after Frieza, they just sort of stopped with power levels because Akira Toriyama didn't like that people were getting obsessed with power levels instead of the actual fighting and the action. Which, again, I guess I'm kind of fucking up on, but at the same time, it's just an interesting thought process. Okay, what would be this person's power level be if we change this? And try to make it as reasonable as possible. To try to slow the shonen protagonist issue where we're constantly having to outdo everything and make every arc seem like it's absolutely insane. Okay, so then what? Well, I still have to pee. Okay, I'll end the video soon, okay? It's just... he didn't feel he would do a good job at writing a romantic story. Or anything lovey-dovey. He thought it wouldn't come off as natural. Or good. Or entertaining. And that even if it was good, natural, and entertaining, that it wouldn't really be appreciated by his audience. That it's not the genre they were looking for. The main thing I'm trying to say is this. Goku is not dumb. And I would also say that Goku would be very, very, very romantic with Chichi. I'm saying that more than likely he was probably being very sexual, very, fucking her on a daily basis, and being very, both romantic and lewd, and going plap, plap, plap all the time with Chichi, and even perhaps making lewd jokes about how much he likes how much her boobs' cleavage looks in certain dresses, and taking her out to get a cosplay of a bunny, the bunny girl cosplay that Bulma wore in the episode where there was Monster Carrot. Yes, a bit of an older villain from back before Pilaf. Heck, technically Chaozu's kind of a half-zombie vampire. That reminds me of the Vambies from Chapter 3 of Brave Fencer Musashi. But I guess the main thing we're saying there is this. I want a Dragon Ball Super movie. I want Dragon Ball Super to tie into GT. I want the ending of Dragon Ball Super to have everything line up with GT. Now let's say Cooler shows up. And we get a really cool reimagining of Cooler the way we did Broly in Super. And of course we have Black Frieza. And initially it could be everybody's fighting, and then we have it early on the fight. We can establish the start of the movie with, our protagonists fighting against Frieza. So let's say Beast Gohan. So let's say start of the movie we have Beast Gohan. Start of the movie we have Beast Gohan. Okay, so start of the movie we have Beast Gohan, Broly, Vegeta, and Goku, Goten, and Trunks there. All of them against Black Frieza. Heck, Piccolo's there too. Okay, so here's the thing. We have Beast Gohan, Legendary Saiyan, Broly, whatever, Mastered Ultra Instinct, Goku, Ultra Ego Vegeta, maybe some new form of Ultra Ego Vegeta. Let's say let's say we have Beast Gohan, Legendary Broly, Goten, Trunks being Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, and Ultra Ego 2 Vegeta that somehow combines it into like a Super Saiyan 3 hairstyle that's a mix of blue and purple. That's Ultra Ego Super Saiyan 3, Super Saiyan Blue, Royal Blue, Adora Blue Evolution, and Orange Piccolo. All of them versus Black Frieza. And let's say Black Frieza beats all of them very badly. So much so that Broly, as well as all of the other characters that have been hanging out with Broly, the two people that are basically his friends now. Let's say Black Frieza kills Broly. And right before he kills her, and he's like Frieza's got like his foot on him, like say Raditz had his foot on Goku. Let's say Black Frieza is basically got Broly mostly dead, and then murders Broly's wife and his friend, who I can't remember their names. And then Broly tries to power up from it, and Frieza just pushes him further down on the ground. Kind of the way Cooler kind of did that stompy thing in the Revenge of Cooler movie. And then kills Broly. Let's also say that he seriously hurts Gotenks, Gohan, and Piccolo. And then, at the very end, because he winds up jumping them at a time when they're training again. So like I was saying, the early thing about the Goku thing, the Gohan, it's great-great-great-grandpa, the Ox King's dad being King Yama, and King Yama's being that Zero Kai, was all that stuff. That taking place in the arc that's occurring right now. What if there be like something going on with that? That arc finishes, and Goku and everyone's gotten a power up and did more training. And then they do like one more meetup like we did before, and they still haven't ran back into Frieza. But this time, Black Frieza shows up on the Supreme Kai planet, not on Beerus' planet. But let's say they all showed up and hang out with Shin and Kibito and all those guys. Anyway, but let's say Frieza is also well aware of how to kill Beerus, killing Shin. So let's say they're there to visit them. And they're not there to train. They're all just there to talk with Shin, Kibito, and the old Kai. And then, let's say Black Frieza shows up there at the Supreme Kai planet. We can also have a guest appearance of the Grand Kai and Pikkon. Heck, who knows? Maybe in this arc that we're going into, maybe we could have a reimagining of Janemba. And maybe we could have like, the Beast Gohan transformation, but maybe we could see a little bit of that in Chichi, or Goten, or Pan, or Ox King, or King Yama. Maybe we could see King Yama using some of that form. Anyway, and then Janemba and that stuff. Imagine the Ox King fighting alongside Gohan. Imagine King Yama fighting alongside Gohan. Then again, at one point I considered the idea of Yu Hakusho being that Raizen, the Mazuko demon ancestor of Yusuke Urameshi, that maybe Raizen is actually a descendant of Goku. Probably mainly through Goten's children. That maybe eventually King Yama decided to betray them and try to get rid of the Saiyans. Or just the fact that he just lives much longer and then eventually things change. I don't know. But the main idea then being is this. Black Frieza shows up. Basically, we have Broly's wife and friends, Beast Gohan, Orange Piccolo, Goten and Trunks, Gotenks, Super Saiyan 3, Ultra Instinct Goku, Mastered UI Goku, and Ultra Ego 2 Vegeta, all just granted not transformed at the time, but all at the Supreme Kai planet talking to Shin, Kibito, and Old Kai. And then Black Frieza shows up. They all start fighting him. And let's say, maybe remember how Frieza on the planet shot Dende first? Heck, maybe Dende's there visiting the Supreme Kai again, which might give Dende some fucking flashbacks. Heck, maybe Hercule could be there again too for some reason. Or maybe just Majin Buu could be there. Maybe Fat Buu could be there too. So yeah, maybe Fat Buu could be there as well. I don't know. But anyway, here's the idea. Frieza could show up and his very first attack could be the way he shot Dende. He shoots Shin. Or what if Frieza tries to initially kill Shin, shoots a blast, and then Piccolo blocks it, and then and then Shin's like, what? And they start fighting, and let's say during this fight there's even a few scenes where Shin tries his hardest too to fight. So yeah, let's say we start this off with Frieza sends a blast trying to insta-kill Shin so that he can kill Beerus. And Piccolo blocks it and saves Shin. And then everybody powers up. And we have SSJ3 Gotenks. We got Beast Gohan, Orange Piccolo, Ultra Ego 2 Vegeta, Mastered UI Goku, Legendary Super Saiyan Go, Broly. We could even have Boo. So we say that we also have Fat Boo there too. Let's say Frieza initially starts off by shooting that blast at Supreme Kai. Piccolo blocks it. Everybody powers up. They go to fight Frieza. Frieza does that shit I mentioned with Broly. Kills Broly's loved ones. And then Broly tries to power up from that. And it's not enough. And Frieza then just crushes him more. And then, squeezes hard enough that all his limbs and his head pop off his torso. He just smashes his torso completely like a watermelon. And his arms and legs and his head fly off. And then Goten and Trunks get knocked unconscious and thrown to the other side of the planet. Piccolo and Boo are not killed, but they're injured enough to where their life is in danger. And at the end, it's mainly... And of course, Beast Gohan goes a bit, giving his hardest alongside the other three. And then let's say, eventually, a really strong blast is being sent by Frieza toward Gohan, and Goku jumps in the way, takes the blast for Gohan. Let's say Gohan gets smacked, beat the fuck down, the way Vegeta was, by Cell, that one smack. And then goes to finish off Gohan, and Goku jumps in the way and winds up getting an arm hurt. Then we have Ultra Ego 2 Vegeta there, fighting a bit. And then, as he goes down, then, Goku's slightly unconscious still. He's able to somewhat be awake. He's kind of watched the fight with Vegeta. And then he sees Frieza starting to go towards Shin. Shin tries a few attacks. He's doing his best. He's getting his ass beat worse than what Fat Buu did to him back at the Buu Saga, where, Gohan realized how badly Shin was losing that fight. Anyway, at that point, the same way Gohan jumped in to try to... But at that point, Goku's in that same situation. And at that point, we can have a similar situation, because for Shin, this would be a flashback. This is a reference for us fans. But for Shin, this then becomes a flashback. Because here's the thing. During the fight where he's getting his ass beat by Frieza, Goku jumps up, goes the Saiyan instinct stuff, and tries to fight Frieza to his best of his ability, and he's just completely outclassed. And then in the end, just the same way Fat Buu did against Gohan, when Gohan was pretending the Supreme Kai, Frieza could do that to Goku and send him off knowing that that's enough to kill him, and then he's not able to get off it on its own. Shin then realizes that he has a flashback. He remembers this is just like the time of Gohan. And so he does the same thing again, knowing that it saved Gohan in the past. It'll save Goku. Anyway, but Goku's now completely unconscious the way Gohan was after that one thing. Frieza then shows up and basically just jams his arm through Shin the way Dr. Gero Android 20 did to Yamcha in the Android Saga, and then throws him to the ground, leaving him for dead. And then looks at Vegeta, who's looking at it in horror, and says, "I'm going to Earth now." And then instant transmission's out there because Frieza can now use instant transmission. But then what happens is this. Before all this started, the old Kai realized the problem this would happen. Or perhaps Shin had a plan ahead of time saying, hey, I don't like being fused with Kibito, but I understand that, I can be targeted one day. So what if he had his earring even ahead off the time in the hands of Kibito, saying, hey, if something like this is going to happen, fuse with me in this situation. Or maybe the old Kai snuckily just took it off Shin's ear without him noticing and gave it to Kibito and told them to hide. Because they knew they wouldn't be strong enough to do shit. And knew Frieza wouldn't care about that. Then when they saw that Shin was dying, and probably had seconds left to live, Kibito then could put the Patar earring on his ear, fuse with Shin, saving his life. Now, here's the thing. One could say whether or not this would still kill Beerus or not. Maybe this is a possibility that this would still result in the death of Beerus. But by fusing with Kibito, it allows Shin to stay alive, but Beerus to die. So in this situation, Beerus is now dead, and maybe there could be a rule against reviving a god of destruction. Which means even though the Dragon Balls exist, and Whis can technically bring people back from the dead, maybe it could be something that's illegal to bring Beerus back. I'd say the only reason we don't want to bring Beerus back is if we want to see a really cool fight scene with Beerus fighting somebody. But let's say in this situation, Beerus could be dead. After this, everyone's trying to regroup, but they know they don't have long until Frieza destroys the Earth. But they really don't know what to do. Now, during this time, Frieza's there. But Frieza winds up running into Cooler. Anyway, so at this point, we have a situation where Cooler winds up delaying Frieza in fighting against a little bit because he wanted the Dragon Balls. And then Cooler winds up working with the Peel-Off gang to get the Dragon Balls to get a wish to gain him some sort of power-up, allowing him the new transformations. And transformations I am going to get into detail in a moment. Some about also is hey, you didn't revive our father, King Cold, when given the option. Anyway, let's also peel off in the gang, because of their betrayal, become villains and enemies of both Trunks and Bulma again, because they betrayed them for the Dragon Balls. Also, they now become extremely old, elderly people, like they are at the start of GT. Beerus is either going to be dead by the end of this, or somehow prevented from being involved in the events of GT in any way. And also could be that because of all this going on, Dai Shinkan could choose to completely isolate Universe 7 from the rest of the universes, making it impossible for anyone, even the angels, to enter Universe 7 at all, and make it impossible for anyone in Universe 7 to ever leave Universe 7. They could also eventually make it so that God Ki can no longer exist, by doing something. But that would be something going on with the Daishinkan. The next thing that would happen is Cooler and Frieza would have their thing, and they'd be fighting a bit. And Frieza would actually, and Cooler would have the advantage. Especially when he goes into his fifth form. And then he winds up showing a sixth form, which would be the form we saw from King Cold in a fan manga, Dragon Ball Multiverse, where in this version there was a King Cold that was fighting against a Super Saiyan Bulla, or Brawl, Vegeta's daughter, but in a timeline where Vegito never defused, and so Vegito then banged Bulma, and that Bulla is the child of the fused being Vegito and Bulma. Anyway, this Super Saiyan 2 Bulla is very strong, and we wind up seeing King Cold not only do the fifth transformation that Cooler did, but also goes further and winds up having more like a xenomorph sort of appearance, and like Bowser shell and lots of spike stuff. I think you really need to look that up for yourself to understand where you're coming from on that. Anyway, though in that timeline, what would happen is that wasn't actually King Cold. What it was is it was actually Captain Ginyu. Captain Ginyu had actually stolen King Cold's body and taken a much more proactive control over Frieza and Cooler as their superior, and trained in King Cold's body to attain new levels of power. It was a very interesting manga. It had lots of what ifs in and of itself. But then say, at this point, we have Vegeta and Gohan recover first. And they go and they fight against Cooler. Because they're trying to get to Frieza, and Cooler's there, and Cooler's fighting him. Frieza, though, I don't know, maybe found a Dr. Gero lab and is just trying to recover. But let's say at this point, Cooler winds up basically treating Frieza like a subordinate. He's like, okay, you stay on the Earth, but don't destroy it. But you can have fun. Kill the people that, your Saiyan monkeys that you hate, that they care about, but don't destroy the planet. I want to rule this place. Because those Dragon Balls can be useful, and I want to keep using them. So, then what happened? Vegeta and Gohan could fight against Cooler, and they could be struggling. And in the end, we have a fusion dance between Ultra Ego Vegeta and Beast Gohan. And they managed to win. By a lot. However, during that time, Goku is recovered, and Frieza is actually trying to kill Chichi and Bulma. And most of the other warriors at this point have jumped into trying to somewhat assist, the Cooler fight with Vegeta and Gohan. So like Tien and Chaozu and a few other people, and Krillin and 18 and 17, they all went to where Cooler was. And they were trying to help the same way like everybody like Yamcha and them were trying to help against Cell. Not very much, but still they tried. In the end, they managed to be a distraction enough for Vegeta and Gohan to do the fusion dance. And then be able to beat Cooler. Now, of course, Frieza. Let's say Frieza has a little scene the way Nappa did in Dragon Ball Z, to where he goes around, imagine the way Nappa went through the plains and destroyed armies, but it's Frieza. Just the final form Frieza from Namek. And then he's not even going golden. He's not even going black. None of those power-ups he's just using. Not even the 100% buff form. It's just, the final form Frieza that we had, initially fight against Goku for the very first time on Namek. And this Frieza's just destroying armies and having fun. Until he manages to find Bulma and Chichi. And at this time, the only people here, the only person here that's available to try to defend, it's Bulma, Chichi. We have Bulma, Chichi, Videl, Pan, and Yamcha. And let's say in this situation, Pan actually does try to fight Frieza a bit, but is quickly overwhelmed, even though Frieza's not even transformed to golden form. When it looks like Pan's going to get killed, even though Pan's much, much stronger than Yamcha, Yamcha steps in. Now, Yamcha can't do a whole lot. Heck, at this point, let's say Pan was actually, sensed her dad fighting Cooler. So Pan wasn't even there. Pan went to go try to help. Heck, the same way like Gohan did the little tackle thing into Raditz and broke his space armor. What if Pan did that to 6th form, Mecha Bowser Xenoverse Zeno Cooler? So at this point, yeah, the only person available to protect Chi-Chi, Videl, and Bulma is Yamcha. And so Yamcha rises to the occasion, does his absolute best. We even see Yamcha use the Kaioken. We even see Yamcha, I don't know. Would you guys want to see that? I don't know. Maybe see Yamcha use a normal Kaioken. With maybe use a Spirit Bomb. That would give Frieza some flashbacks, but at the same time Frieza would find it hilarious and kick his ass harder. And then I imagine, up to this point, the whole show's been normal Dragon Ball Z levels of violence. But now, when it's Frieza in just his, normal final form, like Dark Lumina finale off of final boss of Dragon Ball, final Brave Fencer Musashi. Heck, one of your final bosses is Iron Mouse, the VTuber. It was hilarious. Yes, I think Iron Mouse is awesome. I also think Markiplier is really cool. I don't like Takis, though. But it was cool watching the Takis video. Stay on topic. Okay, I'm just saying. Yamcha fights against Frieza, but now we, hire people that edited Baki the Grappler. And we have the person who, animated and designed the fights for Baki the Grappler do the fight between Yamcha and Frieza. And we have Yamcha give the absolute best fight. We have Yamcha fight so hard that, there's no one that would cast any shame on Yamcha. They'd be like, oh my god, you stuck in there so much. You actually... Heck, we'd have a Thanos reference where he busts Frieza's lip. And Frieza's all that for a single drop of blood. Anyway. Then... Frieza is basically killing Yamcha. And then Goku shows up. And Frieza sees Goku and he's like, hey, you remember this? And he, same way he did Krill, he lifts Yamcha up in the air and explodes him. Goku sees this, completely raged out, finds some new Super Saiyan version. Even though we did see kind of stuff like that, both normal Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan Blue and Super Saiyan God variations of Ultra Instinct. I have no idea what that looks like colored. But the main thing is this. We would see Goku attain a new form and be combining that Ultra Instinct to be fighting Frieza. And basically, Frieza would power up to Black Frieza and they'd be pretty much even. And then Goku uses that form plus Ultra Instinct Kaioken. The Ultra Kaioken. Because remember the fight with Pikkon? The Super Kaioken? So then we have Ultra Kaioken. Ultra Instinct Kaioken plus some additional transformation power-up. And Goku uses Kaioken, Ultra Instinct Kaioken, Wolf Fang Fist. We see Goku use the Wolf Fang Fist and kills Frieza with it. Beyond that, then we just have a few episodes that just sort of tie the end of Super into GT. And then, since GT was already animated and stuff, GT's then canon. And then, what we could do We could get AF anime. Dragon Ball AF can get animated. I'm just kind of like, what are we going to do with the Dragon Ball Daimao thing? Like, what's going to be the plot? I don't know. But the main point being is, we could actually get AF anime with like a whole new set of dark dragons, the demons, marble, and stuff like that. Also, there's Kuriza, the son of Frieza, who kills Pan and Gohan goes Super Saiyan 4. Or Super Saiyan 5 at that point. I don't know. Can't remember. Anyway, this was I don't even know what the fuck this was. Bye.